The radio is low, playing I'm Getting Used to You by Selena as our unmarked Ford Explorer rolls down the dusty road toward the Tijuana River Valley. I catch a glimpse of Audrey. Her fiery red hair is still slightly disheveled. She's gazing out the passenger window, the reflection of passing headlights glinting off her features. I adjust the rear-view mirror, carefully scrutinizing myself. I see there's a trace of lipstick on the collar of my shirt. I hope the dim light will keep it hidden. We both avoid eye contact. We haven't spoken much since leaving the motel room, officially booked for deep cover surveillance work, though the only observation we'd done was of each other. I promised myself the last time we did it, that it would be our last. The fear that gripped me when the condom broke was a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Audrey's panicked eyes as she took the morning after pill are etched in my memory. We'd been playing with fire, and that night, we nearly got burned. Yet here we are, slipping back into our old rhythms as if nothing had happened. You gonna answer that? She asked, nodding towards my phone vibrating against the dashboard. The screen lit up again, flashing a picture of my wife Rocio and our boys. I pressed a button on the steering wheel, silencing the buzzing. I'll call her back later, I murmur, feeling a pang of guilt tighten around my chest. Audrey shrugged, her focus returning to the shadowy outlines of the landscape ahead. If you say so, Ramon. But it might be important. It's just Rocio checking up on me, I say, trying to sound nonchalant. Audrey shifts slightly in her seat, her eyes never leaving the road. She know about us? She doesn't, I say, keeping my voice steady, though a trace of defensiveness sneaks in. She's just been on edge since the Vasquez case. After the shootout, she thinks every call might be the one. The one that ends with you not coming home, Audrey finishes for me, her voice softening. Yeah, I murmured, the weight of the words settling heavy in the car. A thick fog begins to roll in from the coast, shrouding the landscape in an ethereal veil. The headlights of the Explorer cut through the haze, revealing only brief glimpses of the road ahead. As we approach the outpost, the sight before us is eerie, silhouettes of Border Patrol agents. Their forms hazy and indistinct through the fog. They look less like people and more like ghostly sentinels, keeping watch over the edge of the world. The border fence stretched out into the Pacific Ocean, its metal bars disappearing into the misty waters, giving the whole scene a surreal, almost dreamlike quality. Ready? I ask, my voice a bit rougher than I intended. Yeah, let's do this, she replies. She's all business now. She glances at me, her expression unreadable for a second before she turns away, focusing on the gathering shadows stretching before us. We step out into the chilly air, the ground beneath our feet soft with recent rain, and make our way toward the group of border agents. They look relieved to see us, understandable considering the circumstances. One of the agents steps forward, his face partially obscured by the brim of his hat in the fog. Detective Ramon Castillo, San Diego Sheriff's Department, I announce, flashing my badge. This is my partner, Detective Audrey Dawson. The agent nods, extending a hand rough and calloused. Watch Commander Rick Martinez, U.S. Border Patrol. Thanks for coming down here on such short notice. We've got a mess on our hands. What's going on, Commander? I asked, trying to keep my tone even. Martinez's eyes shift toward the portable command post set up a few yards away. It's best if you see it for yourselves. The command post is a hive of activity. Radios crackle with static, agents huddle over maps, and the air is thick with the smell of stale coffee and damp earth. Martinez gestures for us to step inside. He leads us up to a set of monitors displaying grainy night vision footage. Pulling up a pair of chairs to a particular monitor, the commander motions for us to sit. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries. About 3 hours ago, One of our infrared cameras caught a group of migrants moving through the valley. They were following the usual routes, nothing out of the ordinary at first. He pauses, his expression tightening. Then something went very wrong. Martinez hunches over the keyboard, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the space bar as he seeks out the specific clip. Here, he mutters, and the grainy footage begins to play on the small screen. The video shows what appears to be about a dozen migrants huddled together, their movements wary, yet determined as they navigate the marshy landscape. The infrared gives their figures an otherworldly glow, making them look like specters floating across the screen. My chest tightens, a familiar pang of empathy. Though I was born here, my mom wasn't. She crossed marshland like this, driven by hopes of a better life. Keep your eyes on the left side, Martinez advises. As the migrants shuffle through the marsh, one of them pauses, glancing back nervously. The infrared camera, designed to pick up heat signatures, suddenly reveals something chilling. A figure that emits no heat whatsoever. It's an anomaly, darker than the surrounding night, moving with an eerie, fluid grace. The figure moves swiftly, almost gliding over the ground. Without any warning, it strikes. The group of migrants erupts into chaos, scattering in every direction like a disturbed hive of bees. Screams pierce the night, although they're silent on the footage. The migrants, in their desperate bid to escape, are picked off one by one. Each time the figure reappears, a migrant drops to the ground, motionless. The figure's movements are precise, almost predatory, and terrifyingly efficient. Martinez pauses the video, and the screen freezes on a particularly chilling frame. One of the migrants, isolated, his heat signature intense with fear as the entity looms over him. The shape is amorphous, almost ghostly, a swirling mass of blackness that doesn't fully register as any identifiable creature. Shit, Audrey murmurs, her eyes not leaving the screen. What are we dealing with here? No idea, Martinez shakes his head, his eyes not leaving the screen either. I've watched this over a dozen times, and it's like nothing I've ever seen. Thermal doesn't pick it up right, it's cold. Colder than anything alive should be. Any survivors? I ask, though I'm not sure I want to hear the answer. Martinez pauses the video, his jaw clenched. We sent a team in right after the camera lost them. They found clear signs of a struggle, shoes stuck in the mud, dropped belongings, patches of blood, but of the migrants, nothing. No bodies, no survivors, just gone. He lets out a heavy sigh, rubbing his forehead as if to clear away the grim images. Well, except one, he adds, almost as an afterthought. We found him half buried in the mud, unconscious but alive. Who? I ask, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. Enrique Salazar, Martinez replies, dripping with disdain. He's been on our radar for a while. Coyote drug muling, you name it. If it's illegal, he's dipped his fingers in it at some point. I lean forward, my interest piqued. Well, where is he now? In our holding area, Martinez replies. He's shaken up. Bad. Keeps saying things that don't make a lick of sense. We figured he was high or maybe in shock. Audrey and I exchange a look. Can you take us to him? She asks. Sure, I guess, Martinez agrees, standing up. Come with me. He leads us out of the command tent and toward a smaller, more secure area where they're holding Salazar. As we approach the secure holding area, a battered old trailer encased in high barbed wire, the muffled sound of shouting grows louder. Even through the thick metal walls, Salazar's voice carries a distinct note of hysteria. Madre de los silencios, reina del destino, e tus pies despido, mi temor más dueno. Mother of silences, queen of destiny, at your feet I lay my most genuine fear. His words echoed into the night. He's been at it for hours, Martinez grumbles. As we draw closer, a young agent steps away from the trailer, his face lined with exhaustion. He straightens up as he spots Martinez, casting a wary glance at us as we approach. Agent Ortega here. Martinez introduces him with a nod. He found Mr. Salazar half buried in muck and babbling nonsense. Ortega nods in acknowledgement, his eyes flicking towards the noisy trailer. Whatever he's seen, it's got him scared shitless. Nothing he says makes any sense. We pause at the door, the metallic clang of the trailer echoing slightly in the still night air. Ortega unlocks the door, pushing it open with a creak. The inside of the trailer is dimly lit, the only light coming from a harsh fluorescent bulb that flickers intermittently. Salazar is cuffed to a bench at the far end of the trailer, his clothes muddy and disheveled. His eyes are wide, darting around in panic, and as the door opens, he recoils as if expecting an attack. The network of tattoos crawling up his arms and neck stands out, the intricate designs unmistakable in the dim light. The most prominent among them is the black cobra that marks him as a member of the infamous Tijuana drug cartel. Martinez, unfazed by the man's disheveled state, addresses him with a firm tone. "Hey, Salazar, there are detectives that are here to talk to you." Salazar doesn't seem to register our presence at first, his gaze fixed on something only he can see. After a moment, he slowly turns his head towards us, his eyes narrowing as he tries to focus. "Dulce angel de muerte, Yeshua mia plegaria." "Sweet angel of death, hear my prayer," he mutters to himself. Martinez shrugs, standing back as Audrey and I move closer. The stench of mud and sweat is palpable as we approach the cuffed man. He's still mumbling under his breath, his voice a mix of panic and delirium. I step forward, keeping my voice even. "Mr. Salazar, I'm Detective Castillo, and this is my partner, Detective Dawson. We need to understand what happened. Can you tell us what you saw?" Salazar's eyes flit between Audrey and me, his breathing erratic. "It was the devil, essay," he begins, his voice dropping to a whisper as if the very memory scared him. "A shadow that ate light. It moved through them like smoke through a chain-link fence." Audrey leans in, her voice soft but insistent. "Enrique, we need you to focus. What did you see out there? Was it a person? An animal?" Salazar shakes his head vigorously, his face contorted with fear as he glances around the cramped trailer, as if expecting the walls to close in on him. No, it wasn't no person. It wasn't an animal. It was wrong, total mal," he stammers, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "It had..." He pauses, his eyes widening. "Una cara rota." "A broken face?" Audrey asked, kneeling down to his level. "Yeah, like it was shattered, cracked all over, but still moving, breathing, watching." His hands tremble as he makes a motion in the air, mimicking something fragmenting apart. "It looked at me, man. And I felt it in my soul." "Can you describe how it moved, or what it did to the others?" I asked, trying to guide him back to specifics. "It moved like fog, like mist," Salazar continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "It didn't walk. It floated, man. And wherever it passed, people screamed. Fell down, didn't get up. I ran so fast." His voice broke, and he looked down, the haunted expression etched deep in his face. "Look, detectives, with all due respect, I don't buy this supernatural mumble-jumble bullshit," Martinez spoke up, his voice a low rumble. "It's more likely a cartel activity. The Sinaloa cartel has been known to take migrants hostage, use them for smuggling or worse. And he's been neck-deep in that world. This shithead is just playing us." Audrey's expression remained impassive, but her green eyes are sharp, taking in every detail. "So, you think the cartel is dressing up their actions with... what? Legends? Superstitions?" "Well, it's not the first time," Martinez admits with a shrug. "Fear is a powerful tool. Make people afraid of ghosts or curses, and they won't look too close at what's really going on." "Commander, can you give us a moment alone with the suspect?" I asked, my voice calm but authoritative. Martinez catches the hint, his eyebrows lifting slightly. "Right. I'll give you some space." He makes a show of checking his watch. "I need to check in with the command post anyways. Holler if you need anything." As he steps out, the metal door clanging shut behind him, the trailer feels even more confined. I lock eyes with Audrey, and without a word, we both understand the gravity of the situation. Desperate times call for desperate measures. We need to pry information from Salazar, quickly. Salazar's eyes widened in fear as I gripped him by the shoulders and slammed him against the wall. His face hits the metal with a dull thud, and a trickle of blood seeps from his nose, staining his dirt-caked shirt. He gasps, the panic palpable. I lean in, my voice cold and calculating. Mira, pendejo. What do you think would happen if we shipped you to RJD and locked your ass in a cell full of Sinaloas? Detective Castillo's here, Audrey gestures to me. Was undercover with the Sinaloa cartel for over a year. He's seen things that would turn your blood cold. Things that make your little devil story sound like a bedtime fairy tale. I pull out my pocket knife, flipping it open with a swift, practiced motion. The metallic click sounds unnaturally loud in the cramped space. I lean in close, the cold steel just grazing the stubble on Salazar's neck. See, Cabron, the Federation, they like to make examples out of rival cartel members. I growl, my voice low and menacing. They got this little trick called El Corte de Corbata, the necktie cut. You know what that is? I draw the tip of the knife lightly across his skin, just enough to draw a bead of blood. Nuestra Senora de la Santa Muerte, que tus huesos son la fortaleza de mi alma. Our Lady of Holy Death, may your bones be the fortress of my soul. Salazar whimpers a prayer. I pantomime with the knife, tracing a line down his neck. They cut your throat open. From here, I say, dragging the tip of the blade slowly downward. All the way down to here. I gesture towards his sternum, my movements deliberate and chilling. And then, I add, my voice cold and matter-of-fact. They pull your tongue out through the slit. You'd feel it tearing through your flesh, the taste of your own blood choking you as you struggle to breathe. We can do this the easy way, where you tell us everything you know, and maybe, just maybe, you get some kind of protection. Or, Audrey chimes in, or you get a brand new tie. I say, pressing the blade slightly, just enough for him to feel its bite. It spoke to me, Salazar mumbled, his voice barely audible. Not with words, but it's like it whispered directly into my mind. It said, follow the trail of the fallen stars to the sleeping child. The fallen stars, Audrey presses. Salazar clutches at his shirt, his fingers trembling. Yeah, he said dulce dulces, he mutters repeatedly, the single word spilling out between labored breaths. Dulces, I echo. Like candy? What the fuck's that supposed to mean? He doesn't seem to hear her, or chooses not to respond. His gaze is distant, unfocused, as if he's seeing something beyond the grimy walls of the trailer. Dulces, dulces, he continues, the word becoming a mantra, obsessive and relentless. I let out a heavy sigh, realizing we're not going to get anything substantial out of him. I ease my grip entirely, stepping back. We're done here, I say, my tone dismissive, yet internally, I'm filing away every word. Audrey nods, and we step out of the trailer, letting the heavy metal door slam shut behind us. The cold night air hits us, and the sound of the ocean mixes with the rustling of the marsh grass. Martinez is waiting for us, his silhouette outlined by the dim lights of the command post. Anything useful? He asks. Maybe, I reply, keeping my cards close. We need to see the crime scene. The drive to the site is tense and silent, the SUV's headlights slicing through the thick fog like twin blades. The landscape around us feels alien, and marshy ground and twisted trees casting eerie shadows. When we arrive, the scene is exactly as Martinez described. Chaos personified. The ground is churned up, littered with abandoned belongings and deeper grooves that suggest a struggle. The fog hangs heavy, muffling sounds and giving the whole area a claustrophobic feel. The area feels haunted by the terror that transpired, the silence almost oppressive under the weight of unknown horrors. Audrey and I began a meticulous search of the site, our flashlights piercing the fog, casting long shadows on the marshy ground. Every rustle in the underbrush has us tensing, half expecting whatever caused the chaos to reappear. I start from where the video last showed the migrants, moving slowly, searching for any clues that might have been overlooked in the initial panic. Audrey takes the western flank, her steps deliberate, eyes scanning the mud for tracks or signs of disturbance. It's clear this was the epicenter of the panic. Shoes, children's, women's, a single man's boot, are half buried in the mud. I pick up a small, worn-out teddy bear, its eyes missing, and wonder about the child who held it last. The personal items are scattered as if their owners dropped everything in a desperate bid to flee from whatever horror pursued them. Anything? I call out after a few minutes, my voice low, wary of disturbing the dense fog that seems to swallow sound. Nothing yet, she replies, her tone just as tense. We keep searching, the sense of urgency mounting as the minutes stretch into an hour. I pause when I catch a glint of something metallic among the dense reeds, a flash of silver that doesn't belong in the muck. Crouching down, I brush aside the wet vegetation and find a small silver locket. The clasp is delicate, caked with mud but still functional. I pop it open, revealing the photograph of a young girl, no more than 13 or 14, her smile frozen in time within the confines of the locket. Scanning the ground, I notice more metallic objects scattered around. A keychain, a pair of battered dog tags, a twisted fork, a small brass bell, a couple tarnished coins, and a metal whistle. All lying within a few feet of each other. It's as if they've been deliberately placed to draw the eye, the gleaming metal stark against the dark earth. Hey, Dawson, look at this, I call over my shoulder. She's not far, her silhouette ghostly in the shifting fog. She jogs over, her boots sucking at the mud with each step. Audrey kneels beside me, her flashlight sweeping over the scene. Look at how they're laid out, she murmurs, tracing the air with her finger. The items seem to form a pattern, each one pointing to the next, culminating in a rough shape. It's the Big Dipper, she whispers, a tone of disbelief in her voice. See, the handle here and the bowl there. I look again, squinting through the fog in the dim light of our flashlights, and it clicks. She's right. The arrangement of the items, a seemingly random assortment of personal belongings, is a deliberate depiction of the constellation. My mind races back to Salazar's frenzied babbling about the trail of the fallen stars to the sleeping child. It couldn't be a coincidence. I remember learning about the Big Dipper in the Girl Scouts, Audrey murmurs. We used to find Polaris, the North Star. It was like a game back then, using the stars to find our way back to camp. And her voice trailed off. With a renewed sense of purpose, she starts tracing the items making up the makeshift constellation laid out in the marshy ground. The fork and dog tags are pointer stars. Catching on to her intent, I followed her hand as she draws an imaginary line from the pointers through the fog, trying to pinpoint where the North Star should be in our earthly recreation. I signal the others with a sharp whistle, the sound cutting through the damp air like a knife. Martinez and the other agents converge in our position. Their silhouettes loom out of the fog, each one appearing as if materialized from the mist itself. Form up, I command in a low voice, not wanting to disrupt the eerie silence more than necessary. We've got a lead. Might be walking into a trap, though, Martinez warns, drawing his sidearm. We form a tight formation, moving with our weapons drawn, our senses heightened. Audrey's beside me, her P320 at the ready, her eyes darting through the mist. Martinez flanks us, his Glock aimed low, his breathing controlled but audible in the eerie silence. The rest of his team fans out behind us, forming a loose perimeter. The fog thickens as we proceed, each step forward feeling more like a descent into another, less tangible world. Visibility shrinks to mere feet. The world beyond our tightly formed group blurs into indistinct shapes and muffled sounds. The air grows colder, clinging to my skin with damp fingers. Suddenly, a putrid smell slices through the moist air. It's a stench that clings to the inside of your throat, acrid and unmistakable. Audrey wrinkles her nose, her expression one of disgust mixed with alarm. "That smell," she murmurs, her voice barely a whisper over the soft murmur of the fog. "Burning flesh," I nod, swallowing hard against the bile rising in my throat. The smell brings back unwelcome memories of other, darker places. The smell intensifies, the burning scent so overpowering now that our eyes begin to water. We push forward, through every indistinct scream set us to turn back. Martinez holds up a hand, signaling us to stop. We freeze. The only sounds are our heavy breathing and the distant faint lapping of waves against the shore. He points to a barely visible light ahead, not strong but enough to pierce through the fog slightly. "There," he hisses under his breath. The ground underfoot becomes firmer, the marsh giving way to dry, cracked earth that crunches beneath our boots. The sickly sweet stench of burning flesh intensifies. I'm the first to see her, a small figure, propped up against an old gnarled tree. Her position is unnatural, arranged meticulously. As we draw closer, the horrific details come into sharp focus. It's a child, a young girl. Her face is painted to resemble a skull, stark white with hollow black circles around sunken eyes and dark exaggerated lines stretching down her cheeks, mimicking the visage of Santa Muerte, the Mexican folk saint of death. Her small form is dressed in tattered robes that flutter slightly within the breeze. Her head is adorned with a crown of thorny roses, the sharp thorns piercing her brow, causing crimson drops that resemble tears of blood to trickle down her face. Her chest has been opened with surgical precise cuts, revealing a hollow cavity where her heart should be. And inside, a small flame burns. The fire somehow contained, only charring the flesh around the edges of the wound, casting eerie shadows on her pale skin. Audrey gasps, her hand going to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. "Jesus, it's her," she murmurs, her voice breaking. It takes me a moment to understand, and then I see it. It's the girl from the locket. "Fuck," Martinez swears under his breath, his face set in a grim line as he radios for backup. "We need CSI here now," he barks into the handset, his voice rough with anger and something akin to fear. The commander barks orders to his team, setting up a secure perimeter around the girl. The area is marked with evidence flags, each flutter of the small, bright squares a stark contrast to the somber surroundings. Audrey and I begin documenting everything with meticulous detail, our cameras clicking in the otherwise oppressive silence. As we inspect the body, it becomes disturbingly clear that there are signs of cannibalism. Bite marks, unmistakably human, mar the girl's limbs. The flesh torn away in some places to reveal bone underneath. Around the child's form, the ground is littered with what appears to be votive items. Candles still flickering weakly, a set of rosary beads, and oddly, a single cell phone lying a few feet from her body. It's an older model Nokia, probably a burner. I pull on a pair of latex gloves with a snap and carefully pick up the device, ensuring not to smudge any prints that might be on it. I examine the battered old cell phone. The screen is cracked and smudged with grime, but it flickers to life under my touch, asking for a 6-digit passcode. I pause, staring at the prompt. I thumb the power button, cycling through the flickering options, and freeze when I remember Salazar's manic repetition of the word, Dolces. The single word hauntingly echoing in my mind. I think about how letters correspond to numbers on a phone keypad, much like the old 1-800 commercial numbers. It's a long shot, but given the lack of immediate leads, it's the only one we have. I begin to match the letters to numbers, typing them out tentatively. D3, U8, L5, C2, E3, S7. I hold my breath, half expecting it to be wrong. But then the phone unlocks. I stare at the unlocked screen, my heart hammering in my chest. The dim light of the phone casts ghostly shadows across my fingers as I navigate through the cluttered interface. Amidst the jumble of apps and icons, a single video file stands out, labeled simply, Ultimo Mensage, the last message. I tap on it, and the video begins to play. Martinez, Audrey, and the rest of the team huddle closer, their breath visible in the chilly night air. The footage is grainy, the colors washed out, but the image is unmistakable. It's the same girl we just found, only now she's alive, her eyes wide with a terror that chills me to the bone. She's dressed in the Santa Muerte costume, seated on a wooden chair in a dimly lit room. She glances off camera nervously, as if awaiting a cue or fearing a reprimand, before her eyes return to focus on the camera. Her hands tremble slightly as she holds up a piece of worn paper, reading from it in a shaky voice. She spoke in Spanish, that her name is Lucia and 14 years old, and she's from Zamora, Michoacan. She spoke in Spanish, but I'll translate it here. My name is Lucia Alvarez. I am 14 years old, and I am from Zamora. She begins, her voice a whisper. She swallows hard, her eyes darting off camera again before continuing. I have a message from the scatterer of ashes to the ones who have seen death and survived. He says you must follow these instructions exactly as I described them. She reads, her eyes scanning the paper. Lucia's voice grows even more tremulous as she reads from the crumpled sheet, each word spoken with reluctant precision. Step 1. Go to the old chapel of San Pedro on the outskirts of Otay Mesa. There, you will find an inverted cross buried in the attic. Audrey pulls out a pen and notepad, jotting down each word with meticulous care. Her hand moves swiftly, ensuring nothing is missing. Step 2. Beneath the cross, you will find a box of bones belonging to the feathered serpent. Quetzalcoatl. Lucia's voice shakes as she continues, her fingers clutching the paper tightly. Step 3. Place the bones on the stone altar you will see at the center of the chapel. Arrange the bones in a spiral form, from largest to smallest, towards the center. Step 4. Light a candle in the eye sockets of the skull in honor of the Lord of the Day and the Winds. Lucia's eyes brim with tears as she concludes. This must be done before the next new moon to appease the flayed god. If you do not comply exactly, she adds, her voice breaking, more like me will die. Lucia's eyes widen with the dawning realization of her fate. She glances off camera again, her voice trembling as she implores her captor. Please, I did what you asked. I don't want to die. Her plea is desperate, raw with the terror of a girl who knows she is speaking her last words. Tears stream down her face, smudging the white paint in dark lines, transforming her death mask into a tragic, melting visage. Her small frame trembles with sobs, and she clutches at the paper, crumpling it in her hands. The desperation in her eyes is unbearable. The screen goes black suddenly, the abruptness of it like a door slamming shut, leaving only the hollow echo of Lucia's screams in the otherwise silent pre-dawn. The cries taper off, dwindling into a stifled whimper that chokes off mid-breath, leaving a chilling silence in its wake. As the sun begins to rise, casting an eerie glow through the dense fog, the crime scene becomes a flurry of activity. CSI teams in white suits swarm the area, their movements meticulous as they comb through the marsh, documenting and collecting every scrap of evidence with clinical precision. Audrey and I watch them from a distance, our hands stuffed into the pockets of our jackets as a shield against the morning chill. Their careful movements unearth more than just the sad remnants of hurried flight. With each brush and marker set down, the layers of the night's horrors peel back, revealing deeper, darker secrets etched into the earth and trees around us. One of the forensic technicians, a young woman with sharp eyes and a steady hand, calls us over. "Hey, detectives, you need to see this." We make our way over, our boots sinking slightly into the softened earth. The technician points to a set of tracks leading away from the crime scene. They're unlike any shoe or animal print. These are deep, oddly shaped grooves that seem to twist unnaturally, almost as if the creature that made them was skimming, rather than walking onto the marshy surface. Could be some sort of dragging, Martinez suggests, but his tone lacks conviction. I crouch down for a closer look. The tracks are irregular, spaced erratically as if whatever made them was staggering, or not entirely of this world. Each print has a sharp, almost claw-like feature at the ends, suggesting whatever made them was neither fully animal nor human. They lead towards the dense underbrush, then disappear as if the maker had suddenly taken flight, or simply vanished. "Have these been cast yet?" I ask, keeping my voice low. The tech nods. "Yeah, we've got casts and photos, but there's something else." She leads me to the tree where we found the girl. It looks like any other part of this morbid tableau, but then she hands me a flashlight. "Shine it here," he instructs. The beam catches on something etched deeply into the bark. Carved symbols, crude yet deliberate, spiral up the trunk. Each symbol, jagged and deep, depicts scenes that are disturbingly ritualistic in nature. Human figures in various poses of submission and agony, their limbs splayed outwards as if in offering. The central figure on the tableau is a towering skeletal figure, its skin peeled back to reveal muscle and bone. "The flayed god," I whisper, recognition dawning as the details of the carvings become clear. "We're dealing with a cult," Audrey concludes, her voice steady despite the gruesome realization. After the initial shock of the gruesome crime scene, Audrey and I retreat back to the command tent to pore over the video of Lucia Alvarez. The setup is makeshift, a couple of laptops and monitors propped on a folding table, the humming of generators outside barely drowning out the eerie silence of the marshland. "Let's run through this again," Audrey says, clicking on the video file labeled Ultimo Mensage. The grainy footage flickers to life, Lucia's haunted face filling the screen. As the video plays, I focus on the background, looking for any detail that might tell us where it was taken. The room is dim, but there are shadows that suggest depth and the presence of objects just out of the camera's view. Audrey jots down notes as we watch, pausing the video at key moments to scrutinize the surroundings. "There," I point out, pausing the video. In the corner of the room, barely visible, is a poster with distinctive markings. Perhaps a local band or a political advertisement. That poster might help us pinpoint the location. Audrey nods, zooming in on the image. We examine the poster, the resolution grainy but just clear enough to make out the first of a word and the first letter of the second. New H, the visible text reads, followed by a partially obscured logo that could be a sun or a gear, the edges blurred and indistinct. "We need to enhance this, see if we can pull out more details," Audrey suggests, already on her phone contacting the tech team for image enhancement. My mind is racing. I recognize that logo from somewhere. Something I came across in a report or a briefing note, perhaps. Let's dig into it later, see if we can pull up anything on local businesses or landmarks with that name. As the low hum of the generator filled the air, Audrey leaned back in her chair, a frown creasing her brow. "This Lord of the Underworld, who do you think that refers to?" It's all a bit dramatic, like something out of a horror film. I rubbed my chin, pondering. I don't know. Sounds like something Aztec or Mayan, maybe. My knowledge of such things isn't exactly comprehensive. Just bits and pieces of stories my mom used to tell me. Gods and spirits, all interwoven with lessons and warnings. None of that stuff particularly interested me. Pulling out my phone, I type in Lord of the Underworld, along with some keywords from our current case: ritual, cult, Aztec. The search churns through data, and within seconds, links to various articles and mythological databases pop up. One entry catches my eye. A piece on Mictlantecuhtli, the Aztec god of death in the underworld. I go to images and see the god depicted as a skeletal figure, surrounded by motifs of decay and regeneration. I show the phone to Audrey, who leans over for a better look. That's our perp, huh? I mused, struggling to pronounce the word. I scroll through more entries, but none provide a clear motive of reasoning behind such gruesome displays. It's like trying to read a book where half the pages are ripped out. What do you think he meant by, for those who have seen death closely but survived? That's not just random, that's targeted. I lean back against the flimsy chair, the metal creaking under my weight. You know, I've got a bad feeling about this, Audrey. I confess, feeling the weight of each word. It's like that message isn't just for anyone. It's for us. Audrey's eyes narrow, her analytical mind piecing together the unsaid. The Vasquez case, she murmurs, the name hanging in the air like a cold breath. We came out of that by the skin of our teeth. Yeah, we did. The memory of it sits heavy in my stomach. We'd walked through a nightmare landscape, bodies scattered, a community shattered. We decide to shift our attention towards the hunt for the chapel, described in Lucia's chilling video. We pore over maps of Otay Mesa and the surrounding areas, scouring every database and record we can access for any mention of the San Pedro Chapel. The name is common enough to make it a difficult search, but eventually, we narrow it down to a few possible locations. One in particular, an abandoned chapel on the outskirts of Otay Mesa, stands out. It's isolated, run down, and has a history of being a hotspot for illicit activities. With the chapel identified, we return to uncovering the killer's potential hideout. The forensic evidence collected at the crime scene proves invaluable. The peculiar claw-like tracks leading away from the scene are of particular interest. Upon closer examination, the forensic team uncovers soil discrepancies in the samples taken near the tracks. The analysis from the forensics team reveals traces of minerals not typically found in the marshy outskirts of Otay Mesa. Instead, these minerals match those found in the more arid, rocky terrains to the north. Utilizing geological maps, we pinpoint several potential areas where this soil composition could have originated. It's a tedious process, cross-referencing environmental data with recent satellite imagery to narrow down the locations. It hits me that New H could be the start of a company's name, possibly a mining company, given the odd minerals found at the crime scene. I open up a browser on one of the laptops, typing in mining company along with New H and San Diego as additional search terms. The results are mostly news articles about the local industry, but nothing catches my eye. I refine the search, adding defunct or closed to the terms. After several attempts in refining keywords, a hit. An old article about a now defunct mining company catches my attention. New Horizon Quarries. Look at this. I call over to Audrey, pointing at the screen. The article is from a local paper, dated back several years, discussing the closure of New Horizon Quarries due to a series of legal and environmental issues. It mentions the company's last known operating location, a quarry on the northern edge of San Diego County, not too far from our current location. This can't be a coincidence. The unique mineral traces, the location, and now potential link to a quarry. It all starts to form a disturbing picture. We decide it's worth a shot to check out this thing. As Audrey and I huddle in the dim light of the command tent, the weight of what we've discovered presses down on us. We're at a crucial juncture, each decision a potential misstep in a dance with an unknown and deadly partner. Okay, let's think this through, I start, tapping a pen against a notepad filled with details from the night. We can't just follow these instructions blindly. It's obviously a trap, or at least a diversion. Audrey nods, her face set in a determined grimace. Right, but we've got to engage somehow. Keep him thinking we're playing his game while we work our angle. We need to track this guy down before anyone else ends up like Lucia. The strategy is clear. Engage, but on our terms. I sketch out a rough plan on a scrap of paper. We map out a risky two-pronged approach. Audrey and I, along with a few trusted members, form Martinez's team. We'll head to the chapel as per the instructions in Lucia's video. We'll make a show of following the steps, careful to keep our actions visible enough to suggest compliance without actually fulfilling the ritual's darker requirements. Meanwhile, another team, equipped with the best tracking and surveillance gear we have, will scout out the quarry, hoping to catch the killer or whoever is orchestrating these events off guard. As the plan solidifies, I pull out my cell, dialing the number of our superior, Captain Barrett. The line clicks, and his gruff voice, perpetually tinged with the rasp of too many years on the job, crackles through the speaker. Castillo, what's the situation? Barrett's voice is all business now, the underlying concern barely noticeable beneath the surface. I lean against the cold metal of our makeshift command center, watching the early morning mist roll over the marshlands. Captain, we've got a lead on the murder. We think the perpetrator might be holed up in an abandoned quarry to the north of here. There's a pause, heavy with the weight of every bad outcome that could unfold from this conversation. You think, or you know? Barrett's tone sharpens, slicing through the fog of uncertainties. We're nearly certain, sir, I say, walking him through the evidence in our plan. Barrett exhales heavily over the line, a low sound that carries all the weight of his experience and the ghosts of cases gone wrong. All right, but I'm holding you to it. We can't have another Alvarez mass on our hands. You get in, assess the situation, and you get out. No heroics, you understand? Understood, I assure him, feeling the gravity of his words. We'll handle it by the book. He grunts, a non-committal sound that's as close to an agreement as I'm likely going to get from him. Keep me updated every step of the way. And Castillo. Yes, sir. Be careful. This sounds like you're walking into a den of snakes with a stick. Make sure it's a big stick. The line goes dead, leaving a small echo of static that fades into the stillness of the morning. We spend the early part of the afternoon gearing up, poring over maps and checking our equipment twice. Audrey and I, along with a couple of seasoned officers from Martinez's team, load up our SUVs with everything we might need. Night vision goggles, body armor, and more firepower than I'd like to think necessary. As the late afternoon sun lifts the dense fog just enough to lend an eerie glow to the surroundings, our convoy heads out. Audrey and I are in the head SUV, the mood tense but focused. We're heading to the chapel, the supposed site of the next ritual, according to Lucia's chilling message. Meanwhile, the second team is making their way to the quarry, moving in quietly with the hopes of catching our suspect off guard. We maintain open lines of communication, each vehicle fitted with radios tuned to a secure channel. The static crackles occasionally, the voice of Sergeant Rodriguez from the Sheriff's Department checking in, his tone clipped and businesslike. Team 2 approaching the perimeter, all quiet so far. Copy that, I respond, keeping my eyes on the dusty road leading up to the chapel. The structure looms in the distance, an abandoned relic that looks like it hasn't seen a congregation in decades. Its isolated location makes it an ideal spot for nefarious deeds, far from prying eyes, yet here we are, about to pry. As we near the chapel, the air thickens with an uneasy stillness, the kind that speaks more of abandonment than peace. The structure itself casts long, sinister shadows across the cracked earth, its steeple, jagged against the sky like a broken finger pointing accusingly at us intruders. Audrey kills the headlights as we approach, the last few hundred yards covered under the cloak of the vehicle's silent glide. We park a good distance away, out of sight but not out of mind. Each step towards the chapel is measured, deliberate, our boots crunching softly against the dry earth. "Keep your eyes peeled," I muttered to Audrey, scanning the windows of the chapel. They're dark, empty sockets in the fading daylight, giving nothing away. But I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Martinez, who insisted on coming along, signals to his team. 2 agents move to flank the building, their steps as silent as the grave. Another pair positions themselves at the back, cutting off any chance of escape. We're not just walking into a potential trap. We're ready to spring one of our own. I nod to Audrey, and together we step up to the heavy, wooden front door of the chapel. It's slightly ajar, the dark interior beckoning us inside with an ominous promise. I push the door open with the barrel of my 12-gauge shotgun, letting the dim light from outside reveal the chapel's secrets. The inside of the chapel is as dilapidated as the outside. Pews are overturned and graffiti mars much of the wall space. But it's the smell that hits us first. A mix of mold, decay, and something faintly metallic. Is that blood? It wouldn't surprise me. Our lights sweep across the walls, catching on crude graffiti that speaks of dark rituals. Amidst the chaos, my beam settles on the altar at the far end of the chapel. Above it hangs an inverted cross on the wall, its wood aged and splintered, swaying slightly as if recently disturbed. I gesture to Audrey, pointing towards the cross. "There," I whisper, my voice barely audible. Martinez, just a few steps behind, nods, his expression very grim. With a nod, I crouch down, pushing aside a pile of debris to reveal a small rectangular area that's been disturbed recently. The dirt is looser here, contrasting with the compacted filth around it. I use my hands, the cool soil sifting through my fingers, until they meet the hard edges of something solid. "Found something," I announce, my voice low and steady, despite the pounding in my chest. The others gather around as I pull out a large wooden box. It's old, the wood swollen from moisture, but it's what's inside that counts. I open the box slowly, hinges creaking quietly in the heavy silence of the chapel. Inside, a collection of bones lies in disarray. Femurs, ribs, vertebrae, each more chilling than the last. They are not uniform. Their sizes and shapes vary, suggesting they belong to different individuals. Each bone bears the scars of violence, with cut marks and scrapes where flesh was once forcibly stripped. It's a gruesome patchwork of human remains, each piece telling a silent, horrific story of its own. Audrey, her face pale under the beam of her flashlight, catalogs each piece on her camera with a clinical detachment necessary to keep the horror at bay. "We need to get these to the lab," she says, her voice steady. "Each one of these could help us identify a victim, piece together that bastard's history." She looks very focused now. I start rearranging the bones into a spiral on the hardwood floor, more out of a forensic interest than any desire to play into the killer's narrative. Audrey watches closely, her camera clicking at intervals, capturing each phase of the arrangement. The pattern emerges slowly, a grim sort of artistry in the way the larger bones curve outward, tapering to the smaller ones at the center. It's creepy and deeply unsettling, yet there's a method to this madness, a clue perhaps. As I place the last bone, a small, oddly shaped skull at the heart of the spiral, I feel a sense of dread pulling in my gut. The arrangement is way too deliberate, each piece interlocking with the others in a way that suggests not just violence, but ritual. As I finish arranging the bones, the radio crackles to life, breaking the heavy silence of the chapel. "Team 2 to Team 1, come in," Sergeant Rodriguez's voice is urgent, cutting through the static. Team 2 to Team 1, come in. I grab the radio, pressing the transmit button. This is Team 1. Go ahead, Sergeant. We've got something here, Rodriguez reports, his voice tense. And you need to see this. Audrey scrambles to set up the live feed on her laptop. The screen flickers to life, showing grainy, night vision images from the cameras mounted on the team's helmets. The footage is shaky, the camera angles shaky as each team member turns this way and that. The screen splits into multiple views, each one a chaotic snapshot of the quarry's rocky terrain. The harsh white outlines of rocks and sparse vegetation jump out against the black background. But there's something else. Movements. Too fluid and quick to be human. My stomach churns as the camera on Rodriguez's helmet stabilizes for a moment, giving us a clear view. It's a cavernous space, carved into the side of the quarry. The walls rough and echoing the chaos outside. And there, mounted on the walls, are racks filled with human heads, their lifeless eyes staring out into the dark, empty space. The lower racks hold skulls, long stripped of flesh, each one bleached white by time and exposure. But the top rack is a fresh set of horrors, heads of victims in various stages of decay, their features frozen in silent screams of agony. The sounds that flood the live feed next are unlike any I've heard in years of service. A blood-curdling screech that pierces the air, followed by a flurry of panic shouts and the unmistakable staccato of gunfire. Audrey and I watch helplessly, the images on the screen a chaotic jumble as Rodriguez and his team struggle to respond. "Sergeant, talk to me," I bark into the radio, gripping the handset so tightly my knuckles turn white. There's a crackle of static, then a strained voice comes through. It's got me. I can't." I can hear Rodriguez scream in agony, the sort of sound that tells you it's not just pain, but raw, primal fear. Through the grainy night vision footage, glimpses of the assailant flash intermittently, a blur of movement too swift to be clearly seen. Then, the camera jerks as Rodriguez falls to the ground, the view tilting crazily before stabilizing skyward. In that brief, haunting moment, we see it. A creature with a sharp, elongated beak and massive talons, swooping down with the ferocity of a raptor. The chaos on the screen abruptly turns into a horrifying stillness. As the screams and gunfire die down, the camera attached to Rodriguez's helmet captures a terrifying close-up. His head is pinned to the rocky ground by razor-sharp talons, the creature's grip unyielding. Blood pools around his neck, stark against the pale moonlit rocks. A voice then breaks through, ethereal and chilling, coming from just off-screen. The night vision feed blurs for a moment, then refocuses. And though the figure speaking is invisible, the voice envelopes us, clear and disturbingly calm. "You were warned," the voice says, its tone almost conversational but underlaid with a cold seriousness. Instructions were given, not just to be heard, but to be followed. Detective Castillo. Audrey and I exchange a look, a mix of disbelief and terror as the killer called me out by name. "Who are you? How do you know my name?" I demand, my voice steady despite the uncertainty that grips me. "I am a herald of the fifth sun, a harbinger of rebirth and destruction. This world, this era, it's ending, and the new cycle must be initiated," the voice answers enigmatically. The talons around Rodriguez tighten, a grotesque adjustment that elicits another stifled scream from him, barely audible over the crackling radio. "Please!" His voice is a ragged whisper, a plea drowned out by the voice of the assailant. "Complete the ritual, detective," the killer commands. "I won't ask again." Audrey grips my arm, her fingers tight. "Ramon, we can't go along with this. It's madness." I nod at Audrey, my mind racing. We need to buy time, I murmur, keeping my voice low as I scan the chapel. I grab a candle from the altar, the wax firm and cold in my grip. With a flick of my zippo, the wick catches fire, casting a flickering, unsteady light that throws long shadows across the chapel's decrepit walls. I lower the candle into the eye socket of the skull, positioned at the center of the spiral of bones. The small flame seems absurdly delicate in the vast, dark emptiness of the space. The light from the candle shivers, as if it senses the weight of the darkness around it. The skull's hollow sockets stare back at us, the flame reflected like a tiny beacon in the depths of its eyeless gaze. It's done, I say, my voice echoing slightly off the stone walls. More to convince myself that we're still in control than anything else. Arise, Quetzalcoatl, the voice says, its tone laced with an edge that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. With a sudden sickening pop, the killer's talons tighten around Rodriguez's head, crushing it with terrifying ease. Blood sprays across the rocky ground, spattering the camera lens and obscuring the footage. Before we can process the brutality that unfolded, a sound chills us to my core. The rattling of bones, not from the feed, but right behind us in the chapel. We whirl around, weapons raised, my heart pounding in my throat. The bones on the chapel floor tremble and clack against each other with a sound like distant thunder. As we watch, frozen in place, they begin to assemble themselves, each piece moving with unnatural precision. The larger bones form a base, spiraling upwards, stacking into a tight serpentine coil that rises from the ground like some grotesque monument. The coil thickens, and then flesh begins to appear, manifesting out of the chill, damp air. It wraps around the bones like clay being molded by an unseen potter's hands. The flesh is pale and slick, glistening under the dim light as if it were wet. Muscles twitch and contract as they form, binding to the bones with sinewy snaps that echo in the hollow chapel. The creature's body stretches out into a serpentine form, while scales start to cover the newly formed flesh, shimmering under the dim light of our flashlights. The scales are an iridescent array of colors, shifting from green to a vibrant turquoise, each one catching the light like a gemstone. As the final touch, bright needle-like feathers sprout along its spine, framing its form in a mockery of regal splendor. The creature's head forms last, with a jaw that splits distantly reminiscent of a snake's, capable of dislocating to swallow large prey. Yet its eyes, when they open, are undeniably human, deep and intelligent. Audrey lets out a strangled cry, covering her mouth with her hand as she turns away from the screen. I feel bile rising in my throat, the horror of the situation hitting me like a physical blow. The creature's feathers, bright and sharp as blades, fluff aggressively, a clear prelude to an imminent attack. My voice is sharp as I shout, "Take cover!" to my team. As the feathers detach and hurtle towards us like a hail of arrows, I dive behind an overturned pew just as the feathers thud into where I stood mere seconds ago. The wood splinters loudly under the impact, the fragments peppering the air like shrapnel. An agonized scream pierces the chaos. I spin around, expecting to see Audrey safely huddled behind me, but my heart sinks as my eyes find her instead, lying vulnerable in the center aisle. Her body is twisted awkwardly, her face contorted in pain as she clutches her left arm, blood soaking through her fingers and staining the cold stone floor. A few feet away, Martinez lays motionless, a dark pool expanding around him. A feather had torn right through his chest with brutal efficiency, the tip protruding from his back, pinning him to the ground like a grotesque specimen in a collection. Audrey, pale and grimacing in pain, meets my eyes across the room. There's an unspoken understanding between us, a shared history of close calls and narrow escapes, but nothing like this. Peeking out from my makeshift shelter, the eerie silence of the chapel weighs heavily, broken only by a low hissing sound and the distant drip of blood echoing off stone. The creature slithers with grace between the shadows, its scales catching the dim light, creating a tapestry of light and darkness across the floor. I know the monster is using her as bait. I want us out in the open so it can finish us off. But I can't leave Audrey to die. Not like this. Not when I still might help her. As the creature maneuvers through the shadows of the chapel, the scraping of its scales against the cold stone sends shivers through the air. The hiss of its breath mingles with the faint, agonized moans from Audrey, pinned down by pain in the center aisle. Signaling frantically with my hand, I manage to catch the eye of the two remaining agents hidden behind the altar. I motion a hurried plan, anything to buy us a minute, a chance. They nod grimly, understanding the desperation in my silent plea. Covering fire on my mark, I mouth, counting down with my fingers. The agents ready their weapons, eyes locked on the serpentine horror. Now, I shout, and the chapel erupts with a sharp crack of gunfire. Bullets pepper the air, aimed at the creature as it rears back, hissing angrily. Its feathers puff out, deflecting some shots but clearly disoriented by the onslaught. Audrey's pain groans grow louder as I break cover and make a mad dash towards her. Her face is etched with agony, eyes squeeze shut as she tries to press her hand against the wound at her arm. I slide to the ground beside her, grabbing her under her shoulders. Hang on, we're getting out of this, I shout over the roar of our covering fire. We're exposed, every second out in the open a gamble against death. I move as quickly as I can, half dragging, half carrying Audrey towards the relative safety of a shattered pew. Sharp feathers fly past us, embedding into the wooden beams and stone walls with deadly precision. A feather grazes my shoulder, slicing through the fabric of my jacket with a hot sting that sends me reeling. Audrey grips my arm, her voice strained but sharp. Ramon, behind you. I twist around just in time to see the serpent, its jaws agape and lined with needle-like teeth, lunging towards us. Instinctively, I throw myself and Audrey to the side. The creature's jaws snapping shut, inches from where my leg had been. The ground trembles under the impact as the creature's head thuds into the stone floor where we had just laid. Audrey, despite her injury, manages to wrestle her sidearm from its holster. The first shot goes wide, a deafening echo in the cramped space of the chapel, missing the creature as it twists violently. But she steadies her arm, squints through the agony, and squeezes the trigger again. This second shot finds its mark. The bullet hits the creature square in the jaw, an explosion of dark, vicious blood that sizzles when it hits the stone tiles. The impact is so forceful it severs the lower part of the jaw completely, leaving it hanging grotesquely by a thread of sinew and skin. The creature lets out a terrible gurgling scream, its eyes flashing a ferocious red as it thrashes wildly, sending debris flying. Its blood, a luminescent combustible fluid, splatters across the aged wooden pews and the dry, splintered walls of the chapel. The chapel, already reeking of decay and abandonment, swiftly becomes a tinderbox. With each convulsive swing of the creature's injured body, more of the incendiary blood soaks into the porous wood, which starts to smolder under the chemical heat. Amidst the chaos, the air grows thick with the acrid smell of burning resin, the smoke billowing in dense clouds that claw at my throat and sting my eyes. Audrey, half dragged to a marginally safer corner, coughs violently, her face smeared with sweat and grime. Grabbing my partner's arm, I look around for an escape route. The main door through which we entered is now enveloped in flames, the fire feeding hungrily on the old varnished wood. The back, I shout, nodding towards a small barred window that might be just large enough for us to squeeze through. As Audrey and I stagger toward the back of the chapel, the air grows hotter, filled with the thick choking smoke from the burning wood. The creature, wounded and enraged, thrashes less coherently now, its movements becoming sluggish as it bleeds out the luminous, flammable liquid. Every drop that hits the floor ignites another flame, spreading the fire rapidly across the chapel's interior. I glance back to see that only one of the agents, Delgado, has followed us to the back. The other agent, Ortega, isn't so lucky. As the chapel devolves into an inferno, he's caught by a torrent of the creature's blood. The flames envelope him instantly, wrapping around his body in a fiery embrace. At first, Ortega's screams cut through the roar of the flames, his body a silhouette against the firestorm. He flails, trying desperately to beat back the flames that devour his uniform and sear his flesh. But his movements slow, becoming jerky and unnatural, as if he's no longer in control of his own body. Then, eerily, he stops screaming. His charred form straightens up, turning towards us with an uncanny precision. His movements no longer those of a man in agony, but of a puppet jerked by invisible strings. His eyes, what's left of them, glint with a strange, reflective quality under the flickering light of the fire. He doesn't seem to feel the pain anymore. His body moving with a dreadful intent as he comes closer, the heat from his smoldering flesh making the air waver in front of him. "Back!" I shout to Audrey and Delgado, pushing them toward the small window at the back of the chapel. I reach it first, smashing through the bars with the butt of my shotgun. The metal gives way with a screech, opening up a narrow escape route from the burning hell inside. Audrey, weakened by her injury in the smoke, coughs harshly, her body heaving with each breath. I grab her under the arms, practically carrying her to the window. She struggles through the first, the jagged edges of the broken window tearing at her clothes as she squeezes through. Delgado helps from the other side, pulling her out and away from the inferno. I'm about to follow when Ortega's hand clamps down on my ankle with an iron grip. His skin is hot, almost scalding to the touch, yet the flames don't spread to me. His eyes are no longer human, but something darker, emptier. "You cannot escape what is coming. The cycle must be completed," he intones, his voice echoing with a reverberating depth that seems to come from far away. With a desperate effort, I kick at his grip, my boot connecting with his face. There's a sickening crunch, but it doesn't seem to affect him as it should. Instead, he simply releases me, his expression empty as he turns back towards the flames that now fully engulf the chapel. I scramble through the window, tumbling out into the cooler air of the evening, rolling to extinguish any embers that might have caught on my clothes. As we catch our breaths, the smoke billowing from the chapel begins to swirl and coalesce into a larger, more menacing form. It's as if the smoke itself is alive, gathering into a dark, dense cloud above the chapel. The shape it forms is both vague and disturbingly familiar. A giant winged creature, its wings spread wide across the sky, casting a massive, ominous shadow over the land beneath it. As we watch, frozen and horrified, the figure raises what looks like an arm, pointing directly at us before dissipating into the night air, leaving behind only the chaotic dance of the flames. As we stare up at the dissipating smoke, an icy knot of dread tightens in my gut. Audrey leans heavily against me, her breathing shallow and ragged. But it's the look in her eyes that says it all. She's thinking the same thing. We didn't just survive a freak encounter. We played right into the hands of something much bigger and darker than we could have ever imagined. The chapel structure finally gives way under the inferno's wrath, the building collapsing in on itself as we make our way into the darkness. As the last embers of the chapel's destruction flicker in the night, the sounds of approaching sirens and the thumping of helicopter blades fill the air. Within minutes, the area around the burned-out chapel becomes a hub of frantic activity as backup arrives, bringing an armada of armored vehicles, SWAT teams, and multiple news helicopters circling overhead like birds of prey, eager for a story. Amidst the chaos, medics rush to our side. Audrey, pale and shivering from shock and blood loss, is quickly attended to. I'm examined for injuries, a few burns, and that deep cut on my shoulder from a creature's feather. As we're being patched up, sitting on the back of an ambulance, officers coordinate to contain the area, while firefighters tackle the all-consuming blaze. Sheriff Marlene Torres herself arrives at the scene just as the flames begin to die down, her expression set in a hard line that speaks volumes before she even steps out of her cruiser. Her silver hair, usually styled meticulously, is pulled back into a no-nonsense ponytail tonight, and her sharp gray eyes scan the scene with both horror and an unmistakable edge of anger. Beside her, Captain Baird emerges, his burly frame tense with the urgency of the night's events. Torres doesn't waste time, on pleasantries. Her eyes sweep the scene, burning remains, exhausted officers, and then land on me with an intensity that makes me straighten up, despite the pain. Detectives, what the hell happened here? Her voice is controlled, but there's an undercurrent of fury that tells me she's barely holding it back. I stand, though the medic tugs at my sleeve, signaling that he's not done. Ignoring him, I step forward. Sheriff, we followed the leads to this chapel, based on the evidence we gathered. Leads, she interrupts, her tone rising slightly with incredulity. Leads don't usually end with half the county's emergency services scrambling to contain what looks like a scene from a horror movie. Barrett doesn't bother hiding his frustration as he looks from me to the wreckage and back again. I gave you clear instructions, Castillo, he growls, his voice low but carrying in the quiet night. I told you, low profile, assess, and extract. I wince, both from the sharpness in his tone and the ache in my shoulder. Sir, we encountered something unexpected, and the situation escalated quickly. Unexpected? Barrett's scoff is sharp as he gestures broadly at the chaos around us. Understatement of the fucking century. What we have here is a full-scale crisis. Audrey, though grimacing with pain, tries to interject. Sir, with all due respect, we couldn't have anticipated. Barrett cuts her off, his voice booming even over the distant clamor of emergency vehicles. I don't want to hear it, Dawson. We lost good people tonight. Good people who relied on you to make the right call. God damn it. I have to go and tell families that their loved ones aren't coming home. His words stung, more than the physical injuries. Torres cuts through the simmering tension with a brisk wave of her hand, her gaze sweeping the wreckage once more before settling on Barrett and us. I don't have time for this. I've got a PR nightmare to manage and a press conference in less than an hour. Barrett, take over. Without waiting for a response, she turns on her heel and heads back to her cruiser, her team in tow, leaving a palpable void that Barrett fills with his formidable presence. He steps forward, his expression grim and resolute under the flashing lights of the approaching fire trucks. Castillo, Dawson, you're both suspended until further notice. Barrett's voice is serious, almost mechanical, in its delivery. He extends his hand, not in offer, but in demand. Badges and guns, now. Audrey and I exchange a glance, the weight of the situation sinking in. With heavy hearts, we comply, unclipping our badges and handing over our service weapons. The cold metal feels foreign as it leaves my hands. Get yourselves debriefed and go home. I'll be in touch about formal proceedings. His tone left no room for argument, and with a final nod, he turned away, leaving us to face the chaos of the night on our own. As the last flickers of chaos die down and the heavy tread of emergency responders fades into a rhythm, Audrey and I find a brief respite in the cruiser. I pull out my phone, noticing the barrage of missed calls and texts from Rocio. My stomach tightens as I remember telling myself I'd call back, only I never did. The screen shows her messages, simple check-ins that progressed to more worried tones as the night dragged on without a word from me. I swallow hard, feeling the familiar pang of guilt tighten around my chest. There's a voicemail from my wife that stands out. The timestamp shows it was just left a few hours ago. I press play, phone held close to my ear, bracing myself for her anger at not calling her back. Her words are hurried, her tone edged with panic. Ramon, I don't know what's going on, but there's someone outside the house. They've been lurking around since dusk. Just standing there across the street, watching. I called the police, but they said they're stretched thin tonight with some emergency, and it might take a while. I'm scared. As the voicemail played, I put the phone on speaker, letting Audrey listen too. Her voice, usually so calm and composed, was laced with undeniable fear. The boys say they heard scratching at the wall. I think I saw a shadow move past the back window. Her voice cracks as the background noises grow louder on the voicemail, the unmistakable sound of shattering glass piercing through her words. Ramon, they're in the house. Her scream slices through the air, raw and terrified, followed by the high-pitched cries of our boys, their fear palpable even through the digital recording. The voicemail cuts off abruptly, leaving a haunting silence that chills me to the bone. My hand shakes as I lower the phone, the afterimage of the call's timer blinking mockingly back at me. As we pull onto my street in the quiet Claremont neighborhood of San Diego, the sight that greets us sends a shiver down my spine. The front door of my house is not just open, it's torn off its hinges. Lying in a shattered heap on the front lawn, the windows are dark, the interior is swallowed up by an ominous shadow that seems to pulse, with a life of its own. Fuck, I mutter, pulling the cruiser to a sharp stop. Audrey's already at the trunk, her hands steady as she pulls out a couple of tactical flashlights and our backup weapons, a pair of Glock 22s, we'd stash for emergencies. We make our entry, the beam of our flashlights slicing through the suffocating darkness of the living room. The house feels unnaturally silent, like it's holding its breath. As I step over the threshold, the splintered wood of the doorframe crunches under my boots. The living room is in chaos, furniture overturned, cushions slashed, family pictures lie in tattered heaps on the floor. A sharp pang hits me as I spot a small frame photo of Rocio and the boys, the glass cracked but their smiles still bright under the jagged lines. My flashlight catches something else on the floor, dark, thick droplets that lead towards the hallway. Blood. A lot of it. My stomach knots as I follow the trail, each drop a grim breadcrumb leading deeper into the nightmare. The overhead light flickers sporadically, casting quick flashes of light over the scene, a grim strobe effect that reveals more splashes of blood, and worse. Small drag marks as if someone had been pulled. My mind reels back to the Vasquez case. Memories of the screams, the gunfire, and the blood smeared across old concrete flash through my mind. We follow the trail of blood to our bedroom, the dread in my gut twisting tighter with each step. The door is ajar, and as I push open, the scene inside makes my heart stop. The bedroom looks like a tornado tore through it. The windows are shattered, sheets tangled and shredded, while dresser drawers hang open. Their contents strewn across the floor, but none of that compares to what lies on the bed. There's a body, a sight so grotesque it takes a few seconds for my brain to even process what I'm seeing. The figure is laid out almost reverently, arms and legs spread, pinned down by shards of broken glass and splintered wood. The body's face is gone. Skin and muscle torn away, leaving only the gleaming white bone of the skull staring back. The eyes are missing, hollow, empty sockets that feel like they're looking through me. And the hands are gone. Severed at the wrists, leaving bloody stumps soaking the bed in a ritualistic display. My flashlight trembles in my hand as I take a step closer to the body, dread gnawing at my insides. Every instinct is screaming at me to run away, to leave, but I can't. I have to know if it's her. I force myself to look closer. My mind races, trying to piece together the details that don't add up. Then it hits me like a freight train. This body, this poor mutilated body, it's too small. The realization floods in all at once. Sophia. The young Colombian au pair we'd hired to help with the kids. The girl had just started working for us not even 2 months ago. The recognition brings no real comfort, just a shift in the dread that has been tightening around my heart. I stagger back, my stomach turning, and I grip the doorframe to steady myself. Just then, a soft rustle from the hallway shatters the silence, pulling my attention away from the grisly sight on the bed. My heart pounds against my ribcage as a sick sense of dread fills the room. The rustles transform into a low, crackling chuckle that seems to echo from every corner of the room, clawing its way under my skin in the worst possible way. Audrey then grabs my arm, her grip tight. "Ramon, behind you." I spin around, gripping the Glock tighter as its flashlight beam swings towards the door. The sight that greets me robs me of comprehension. Framed by the splintered door, peering out from the darkness of the hallway, is an abomination. The thing is wearing Sophia's face like a sick mask. Her features stretched across its bony skull in a horrific grin that drips with dark, oozing blood. As it notices our stares, the creature begins to move, or rather contort. With a fluidity that defies human anatomy, it starts a crab walk, its limbs bending unnaturally as it scuttles towards us. The movement is jerky, accompanied by the sickening sound of cracking bones and the wet slap of its limbs against the hardwood floor. The creature's twisted advance triggers something primal within me. Every ounce of fear I have morphs into a murderous rage. My home, my sanctuary has been violated, my family threatened. This abomination before me, wearing Sophia's face like a trophy, ignites a fury so raw, so potent, it almost blinds me. But I don't shoot. I need it to talk, if it even can. So with a guttural yell, I charge. My instincts take over. I leap forward, slamming into the creature with all the force I can muster. The impact sends us crashing back into the hallway, the entity's form undulating under me. It's an explosion of fury, all punches and elbows, fueled by a desperate need to protect what's left of my family. I seize it by the shoulders, slamming it against the wall with a force that knocks nearby picture frames from the wall. Audrey isn't far behind. Grabbing a heavy bookend from a nearby shelf, she swings with all her might. The object connects with a sickening thud against the thing's head, sending it reeling. I grab a broken curtain rod, its jagged end sharp and splintered. Without hesitation, I plunge it into the creature's chest. It lets out a guttural screech, writhing violently as I press harder, driving the makeshift spear deeper. Its movements become frantic, limbs flailing in unnatural angles, but the rod holds firm. A howl erupts from its twisted mouth, a high-pitched, inhuman scream that reverberates through the hallway. The thing flails, but I hold firm, pinning it against the wall as dark, vicious blood spills from the wound, pooling at our feet. Its hand claws weakly at me. I twist the rod deeper, ignoring the splintering of bone, my voice a low growl as I lean close to its deformed face. Where is my family? What have you done with them? I demand, each word punctuated with a twist of the rod. The creature, pinned and writhing, coughs up a grotesque mixture of blood and something darker, its eyes flickering with a malevolent light. It speaks in a stilted Spanish, each word dropping like stones from its mouth. Betrayal. We know your betrayal. My grip on the curtain rod tightens, the metal biting into my palms. What betrayal? The creature's voice is raspy and oddly robotic. We know the truth about Vasquez. You betrayed everyone. I'm totally thrown off guard at this point. What do you know about the Vasquez case? I hiss. Lies, lies. Everyone knows. Castillo the traitor. The creature's words come out garbled, like a parrot regurgitating phrases it doesn't understand. The weight of the creature's words hits me like a physical blow. I'd been embedded with the cartel in order to gain their trust. Officially, my role was to relay critical information back to the sheriff's department, to bring down one of the largest drug operations funneling into the Southwest. The Vasquez case was supposed to be a straightforward operation, intercept a massive shipment of drugs and weapons moving through the border, and, if possible, take down the famous cartel boss, Manuel Eldon Vasquez. But things had gone sideways, fast. It had ended in a disastrous shootout, with bodies of agents and cartel members alike, scattered across a warehouse on the outskirts of Chula Vista. The creature laughs, a horrifying gurgling sound. The Queen knows. The games end today. Castillo the rat. Its words cut deeper than any physical wound could, unraveling years of buried secrets. The revelation shatters the last vestige of restraint in me. How do you know about that? Who are you? For years, I lived a double life. To everyone else, I was Detective Ramon Castillo, a straight-laced cop, a family man who did the job by the book. But beneath that facade, I was something else entirely. A ghost in the machine. I wasn't just a dirty cop taking bribes or looking the other way when drugs hit the streets. I was something far more dangerous. A mole embedded deep within the sheriff's department from the very beginning. Handpicked by Don Manuel himself to be his eyes and ears, to infiltrate law enforcement and feed them just enough to stay one step ahead of the feds, the DEA, and anyone else trying to bring him down. I've got 1,000 questions running through my head, all of them colliding with the weight of what the creature just said. But none of that matters right now. Not the past, not the mess I've been trying to cover up for years. My family is all I care about. I twist the curtain rod deeper, my breath coming out in ragged bursts as I glare down at the monstrous thing. Its misshapen body writhes in pain, but there's no humanity in its eyes. It's like looking into a void. A cold, endless void. Where are my wife and sons? I growl, my voice barely recognizable, even to myself. It rasps, blood bubbling at the corners of its mouth. If you want to see them again, you must return the dagger of holy death to the scatterer of ashes. The scatterer of ashes. The words hit me like a freight train. That name again. The same one Lucia Alvarez had whispered in her dying breath. What dagger? But ultimately, these words mean nothing to me. I don't have any damn dagger. What are you talking about? My voice cracks as I slam the creature back against the wall, fury clouding my thoughts. It only continues, its voice broken, a monotone chant. The dagger was taken, stolen, but it must be returned, or their souls will be ashes in the wind. As I stare down at the creature, struggling to keep my anger from boiling over, it starts to make a guttural sound, a hacking cough that I think might be its last breath. But no, its mouth opens wider, blood and bile dripping from its lips as it begins to spit out something else. Numbers, a garbled string of numbers. 32, 7947, 116, 9625. The thing repeats the digits like a broken record, over and over again, its voice a raspy wheeze. I slam it against the wall again, the jagged rod still pinning it in place. You think I'm playing around? Tell me where my family is, or I'll rip you apart. Ramon, wait! Audrey's voice cuts through the chaos, urgent but calm. She's clutching her phone, her face pale but focused. Those numbers, I think they're coordinates. It's giving us something. My grip slackens slightly as Audrey's words sink in. Coordinates, a location. This could be where they're holding Rocio and the boys. It could also be a trap, but it's all we have. Realizing I'm not going to get anything more coherent from the creature, I turn to Audrey. Did you get those coordinates? She nods, her expression grim as she taps her phone, saving the numbers. With one final guttural roar, I drive the curtain rod all the way through, impaling the creature fully against the wall. The force of the impact sends a spiderweb of cracks through the plaster, dust cascading down like a grim snowfall. The creature's body spasms violently, a puppet jerking on unseen strings. Its mouth opens in a silent scream, the stretched, mangled semblance of Sophia's face distorting into something even more nightmarish. The room fills with a sickening, squelching noise as the body begins to disintegrate. Bits of its flesh start sloughing off in wet, heavy clumps, hitting the floor with sickening plops. The blood, dark and too thick, pours out in torrents, pooling at the base of the wall in a viscous, spreading stain. The smell is unbearable, a putrid mix of decay and something bitter and burnt that fills the air and coats the inside of my throat. As the creature completely disintegrates, it leaves behind nothing but the sagging, empty skin that once belonged to Sophia. The skin, paper thin and now drained to life, peels away from the wall like a deflated balloon. It slumps to the floor in a crumpled heap, the seams of flesh ragged and torn as though it had been hastily stitched together only to be discarded. I'm standing there, breathing hard, the jagged curtain rod still in my hand, dripping with whatever the hell that thing was made of. My mind is racing, trying to make sense of the creature's last words, the numbers, the coordinates. Everything is spinning out of control. Audrey's hand grips my shoulder, yanking me back just as my vision starts to blur with anger. "Ramon!" she shouts. I step away from the mess, wiping my hands and my pants out of reflex, even though I know there's no getting rid of the stain. This day is left. "How the hell did it know about Vasquez?" Audrey finally asks, her voice cutting through the thick air. "How did it know about what we did?" Audrey's question hangs in the air, and I can't avoid the look she's giving me. The department had its suspicions about me being a cartel plant for a long time, but they never had enough evidence to pin me down. Instead, they assigned Audrey, the golden girl of the force, to keep tabs on me. She was clean. Too clean. At first, it was all business. Long shifts, stakeouts, and her doing her job by the book. But things got messy. After her nasty divorce, I could see the cracks in Audrey's usual tough facade. She was vulnerable, raw, and it didn't take much to influence. Late nights led to beers, then talks. I tested her, dropped her hints, and when she didn't report it, I knew she was slipping. Then we started fucking. Once that line was crossed, it got easier to pull her in. She let things slide, fed the department false reports. It was subtle at first, small lies buried in paperwork. But by the time the Vasquez case blew up, she was too deep. We both were. Audrey's standing there, waiting for an answer. But the truth is, I don't have one. Not one that makes sense anyway. Everything feels off, like we're playing a game we don't understand, and someone else is pulling the strings. My mind races, piecing together fragments of conversations, half-heard rumors, and that nagging feeling I've had for months, maybe years. "Look, Audrey," I start, keeping my voice low but serious. "There's something bigger at play here. This thing, whatever the hell it was, it knew too much. About Vasquez, about me, about us." She raises an eyebrow, clearly skeptical but willing to hear me out. "You think it was a setup?" I nod, running a hand through my hair, still sticky with sweat and grime. "Barrett was way too quick to throw us under the bus, don't you think? First sign of trouble and we're suspended, no questions asked. And Torres? She couldn't get out of there fast enough. She was washing her hands of this whole thing like she knew it was coming." Audrey looked at me skeptically. "Wait, you think the captain and sheriff are involved?" I press on, my thoughts racing. Think about it. Rocio calls 911 panicking because someone's outside our house. Someone watching, waiting. And what happens? Nothing. The police are too busy to respond to a cop's wife in distress? That's some bullshit. Audrey is staring at me, her expression unreadable. I know what she's thinking. I can see it in her eyes. She's wondering if she can trust me. And hell, I don't even know the answer myself, but one thing's clear. We can't trust anyone in the force anymore. Not after this. As though to drive home my point, the distant sound of police sirens pierces the air. They're coming for us. "We need to move, now," I mutter under my breath. We move fast, slipping through the back of the house and out into the yard. I glance toward my cruiser parked up front. We can't take it. That's the first thing they'll be looking for. I grab my laptop and some gear from the cruiser, shoving them into a duffel bag. The flashing lights are closer now, the distant wail of sirens growing louder with each passing second. My eyes dart toward the neighbor's driveway. Dave's old Chevy Tahoe sits there. I remember overhearing Dave mention last week that his family was headed out of town for vacation. The car won't be reported missing for at least a couple days. Stay low, I whispered to Audrey as we make our way to the SUV, ducking behind bushes and fences. We reach the Tahoe, and I jimmy the lock open with a practice move. Hot wiring cars isn't something I'm proud of knowing, but in moments like this, I'm damn grateful for the skill. Sorry, Dave, I mutter, promising myself I'll return the vehicle once this nightmare's over. If I make it out of this. The engine roars to life and we're off, slipping away before the first patrol car rounds the corner. We know exactly where to go. The safe house, miles outside the city, very deep in the desert hills where no one asks questions and fewer people give answers. Only Audrey and I know about it. A just-in-case shit ever hit the fan place. We pull up to the rundown cabin just as the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert. I kill the engine and step out into the cooling air, my boots sinking into the soft dirt. Audrey follows, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes are sharp, constantly scanning the horizon for any sign we've been followed. The cabin isn't much to look at, a single-story shack, barely holding itself together with peeling paint and windows that rattle in the wind. But it's got one thing going for it. No one knows we're here. We make a quick sweep of the place, checking every corner, every window. Satisfied that we're alone, I head to the small utility room in the back and fire up the generator. The old machine sputters to life, filling the cabin with a low, steady hum and bathing the room in dim, flickering light from a single overhead bulb. Audrey sinks into one of the worn-out chairs by the small kitchen table, cradling her injured arm. Blood is soaked through the dressings. I grab the first aid kit from the duffel bag and kneel beside her. This is gonna sting, I warn, pulling out a bottle of antiseptic. She just nods, her jaw clenched. I work quickly, cleaning the wound and wrapping it with fresh gauze. As I finish, she looks up at me with those green eyes. Your turn, she says, nodding toward my shoulder, where blood is soaked through my jacket from the cut I got back at the chapel. I don't protest, there's no point. I pull off my shirt, revealing the mess underneath, not just the wound, but everything else. Her eyes trace the tattoos that cover my torso, intricate black patterns swirling across my chest, down my arms and over my back. Symbols, dates, and names. There's the black scorpion crawling up my ribs. A mark of one of my loyalties to the cartel, but that's not the one that catches her attention. It's the other tattoo, the one just below it. A small skull with a thin blue line running through it. The mark of a cop killer. It's not the first time she's seen it, but this time it feels more visceral. Her fingers tremble slightly as she redresses the wound on my shoulder. Once Audrey finishes with a bandage, she sits back in the creaky chair. So, what now? She asks. I take a moment to compose my thoughts. One thing's for sure, I'm not playing their game. Whoever's behind this, they want me to follow their little script like a good little pawn. But I'm not about to let some fucking psycho dictate how this ends. We go rogue, I say, straightening up. We find my family, we get them safe, and then we hunt the bastards behind this and make them fucking pay. All of them. She nods in solidarity. Okay, let's get to work then. We get to work fast, turning the cabin into a makeshift war room. The table is covered in papers, maps, printouts of the coordinates, and anything we can pull from the limited info we have. I thank God the Wi-Fi still works, even if it's spotty. The satellite dish on the roof is old, but it'll do for now. I turn on my laptop, pulling up satellite images of the coordinates the creature spit out. My fingers tremble as I type in the coordinates. The numbers flash on the screen. Latitude, 32.7947. Longitude, 116.9625. Audrey stands next to me, peering over my shoulder. Where is it? She asks. El Cajun, I mutter, my thumb scrolling through the map. The dot lands near an industrial part of the town east of San Diego, not too far from where the highways intersect. I zoom in on the satellite view, my brow furrowing as I try to make sense of the location. Audrey leans over. That's where they're keeping your family? No, that's where they want us to go. My voice is quiet but firm. An industrial zone surrounded by empty lots and abandoned warehouses. Multiple entry points, but no clear exits. It's perfect for an ambush. Looking closer at the coordinates the creature gave, something feels off. There's a small detail on the satellite map that stands out, a patch of land that doesn't quite fit. Among the sprawling industrial area, there's an unusually large swath of underdeveloped land. See that? I pointed the spot. Audrey leans in closer, squinting at the screen. Yeah, what about it? No structures, no roads leading in or out. Just an open field surrounded by factories and warehouses. It doesn't make sense for a prime spot like that to be empty, I say, furrowing my brow. I swipe through some more satellite images, zooming in on the area from different angles. That's when something weird stood out. A subtle change in elevation around the edge of the empty land. Look at this, I said, tapping the screen. The train dips in around the edges here. It's like the ground's hollow. She frowned. You think it's built over something? I don't know, it could be, I replied, leaning back, my brain churning through possibilities. A bunker, maybe, or an underground tunnel system. Something's going on under there, that's for sure. We spend the next half hour combing through public records, land surveys and old building permits. At first it seems like a dead end. Everything shows the area has been zoned for industrial use but never developed. No permits, no environmental assessments, nothing. But then Audrey stumbled on a curious document buried in the city's geological surveys. Wait a second, she said, her finger hovering over the screen. This whole area sits on top of an aquifer. An aquifer? Why would that matter? I asked, my interest piqued. Well, aquifers are natural underground reservoirs of water. But here's the kicker. This one particular has been marked off limits for drilling or development since the 80s. Apparently it's one of the main sources of fresh water for parts of San Diego County. Anything that disturbs it could cause major contamination. So no one could build on it, I mutter, rubbing my chin. But that doesn't mean something isn't under it. We exchange looks. This can be the perfect place to hide something. If there's a network of tunnels or caves down there, it could be completely invisible from above ground. After some digging, we find a few old utility reports that hint at the existence of storm drains and maintenance tunnels that have been sealed off decades ago. One report in particular catches our attention. A sewer line that has been rerouted, with its original access points marked as decommissioned near the coordinates we're looking at. Bingo, I say, tapping the screen. That's our way in. Audrey and I sit there, staring at the laptop screen as if the dots will magically connect themselves. The coordinates, the aquifer, the sealed tunnels. It's all adding up to something. But there's still that damn missing piece. What do you think about the dagger, exactly? Audrey asks, breaking the silence. She sounds as exasperated as I feel. I let out a sigh, rubbing my temples. I don't know, but I think it ties back to the Vasquez case. We both knew that Sting was messed up from the start. My mind runs through the events of that night. Remember how on edge the cartel was? They were whispering about something big, something more valuable than anything they'd ever smuggled before. It wasn't just the usual haul of narcotics and AKs. Yeah, they were talking in hushed tones about the relic, Audrey adds. It has to be connected. Well, there's only one way to know for sure. I nod, already reaching for my jacket. We have to talk to Vasquez himself. To make contact with the Sinaloa cartel in San Diego, you don't just show up at a dingy bar or some dark alley like in the movies. No. The people running the largest and most powerful cells operate in plain sight. You find them behind businesses that look squeaky clean. Legit operations like high-end car dealerships, trucking companies, even private security firms. They own parts of the city, and the trick is knowing where to knock. La Colmena is nested in the heart of the port of San Diego, a sprawling industrial maze of shipping containers, cranes, and warehouses. To the untrained eye, it looks like any other bustling freight company, with semi-trucks pulling in and out, workers in high-visibility vests crisscrossing the yard, and the hum of forklifts echoing across the asphalt. But under the surface, the hive is a well-oiled machine, the nerve center of the operations in Southern California, running everything from drug distribution to human trafficking out of one unassuming facility. As we approach the entrance, the facade doesn't fool me. I've been here before. This place is built like a fortress, armed guards at the gate, high-tech security cameras on every corner, and trucks loaded with product that are always on the move, even in the dead of night. We approach the security checkpoint. The guards here aren't your average rent-a-cops either. They're cartel soldiers, heavily armed, their eyes sharp. They don't smile, they don't joke around. You either have business or you don't belong there. A guard steps up to the driver's side, his bulk filling the window as he leans in. His hand rests on the butt of his pistol, just in case. ID, please, he says, his voice polite but clipped, like he's going through the motions. I reach into my jacket and pull out my wallet, sliding my license into his waiting hand. His eyes flick down briefly to the ID, then back up to me. He doesn't hand it back, though. Not yet. What's your business here? The question is simple, but the edge in his voice isn't. He knows no one just strolls into La Colmena without a damn good reason. We're here to see Don Manuel, I say, keeping my tone even. There's no point in playing games with this guy. He's not the decision maker, just the gatekeeper. The guard raises an eyebrow. You have an appointment with the CEO? His words are loaded, almost daring me to answer wrong. I lean in slightly, meeting his gaze head on. No appointment, but tell Aguila that Detective Castillo has a message for him. I keep my voice low. The name should do the trick. Aguila is one of Don Manuel's trusted lieutenants, a man with enough pull to either get us inside or have us disappear, depending on his mood. The guard doesn't flinch at all. He gives me a cold, assessing look. After a tense moment, he speaks again, his voice flat. What's the message? I don't blink. And this is the part where every word counts. Tell him that the crows are gathering again. He'll know what it means. He studies me for a moment longer, then nods curtly. Wait here. He walks off towards a small office near the entrance, leaving us standing in front of the gate. I glance at Audrey, who's sitting next to me, her eyes scanning the yard, like she's already counting exits and potential threats. Think he'll bite? She asks quietly. Yeah, he'll bite, I reply, though part of me wonders if we're biting off more than we can chew. The guard returns, after what feels like an eternity. He taps the side of his earpiece, listening to a garbled voice on the other end. Finally, he jerks his head toward the gate. You're in. Follow the main road straight to the loading docks, he says flatly, handing my ID back. Don't make any stops and don't stray off the path. Aguila will meet you there. No need to tell me twice. As soon as we reach the loading docks, a group of vehicles appear from the far side, cutting across the yard. SUVs and pickup trucks, blacked out windows, and engines rumbling with quiet menace. They fan out, surrounding us in a tight semicircle, boxing us in. Audrey's hand twitches toward her gun, but I shoot her a quick glance. Easy, I say under my breath. Doors swing open almost simultaneously, and a group of armed men step out. They fan out, forming a loose circle around us. They're all business, dressed in tactical gear, faces impassive. They don't raise their weapons, not yet, but the message is clear. One wrong move, and we're not leaving this place breathing. At the center of the group, stepping out of the lead SUV, is Bruno Aguila Pagan. Even in the fading light, he's unmistakable. A stocky, broad-shouldered man with a cold, calculating gaze that could freeze you in your tracks. His dark hair is slicked back, and his face is a map of scars, each one telling a story of violence. He doesn't need to bark orders. The men around him know exactly what to do just by the way he moves. Aguila earned his reputation as one of Vasquez's most trusted and ruthless sicarios, a cartel hitman who doesn't just kill, he makes examples of people. As we step out of the vehicle, I can feel the weight of every eye on us. Aguila leans against his SUV, arms crossed over his broad chest, his eyes cold and unreadable. Flick between the two of us, sizing us up. "You got some cojones showing up here, Castillo," he says, his voice a low growl, "after the mess you left in Chula Vista." I force a tight smile, trying to keep the tension in my shoulders from showing. "Well, I figured I'd owe you that much, Bruno," I say, keeping my tone level. "After all, I'm the reason Vasquez walked free that night." He's still pissed about the ambush. That whole operation had been a disaster, and he wanted someone to take the blame. But I'm not about to let them pin it all on me. Aguila steps forward, his bulk casting a long shadow in the fading light. "Last I checked, it was your so-called undercover operation that brought a battalion of feds down on our heads. You screwed us, and now you're here, thinking you can walk back in like nothing happened?" I don't bite back immediately, but I don't let him off the hook either. I didn't screw anybody. If I hadn't done what I did, Vasquez would be sitting in federal lockup right now, and you know it, and I know it. Aguila's scarred face twisted into a sneer. "Loyalty is a funny thing, Castillo. You're right, Vasquez isn't rotting in a cell, but I don't fucking trust you. The streets talk, and they say you've been playing both sides. They say that you're nothing but a fucking snitch." I can see that he's baiting me, trying to get under my skin. "Look, Bruno," I say, taking a deliberate step closer. "You can believe whatever bullshit they're saying, but I know the truth about what really went down." "Okay, well then what do you want, Ramon? You didn't come all the way down here just to reminisce," he says in a low voice. "Spit it out, let's get on with it." I need to speak to Don Manuel. Aguila then lets out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Whatever you need to say, you can tell me. Anything for the Don goes through me now." "Well, I'm not here to deal with the middleman," I say, keeping my voice steady but cold. "This is above your pay grade." "You know what? You must have a death wish," Aguila spits, stepping even closer, his breath hot on my face. "You don't get to come in here and act like you're still one of us. You're done. The only reason you're still breathing is because I haven't decided how much fun I want to have before I end you." "Well, you could try that," I reply. "But we both know Don Manuel would have your head if you did. You really want to risk that? Over some bruised ego? Do you really think death is the worst thing that can happen to you?" He shoots back, his voice dripping with menace. "There are things out there that'll make you beg for death." Before I can respond, Audrey steps forward. "Yeah, we know," she says, her eyes locked on him. "We've seen them." Aguila's eyes flick toward her, and his sneer widens. "What's this? You bring your little bitch along for protection? I thought you were a man who could handle his own problems." "You need to leave her out of this," I say firmly, stepping between them. "Yeah, you always had a soft spot for redheads," he scoffs. "Your wife not fucking you no more? Or is this one just a little more eager?" My jaw clenches, but I keep my voice level. "Watch your mouth. Don't talk to her like that." He raises his hand, motioning to his men. "Check her for a wire. Let's see if she's got anything hiding under that pretty little outfit." Before I can react, one of his guys steps forward towards Audrey. His hands outstretched like he's going to pat her down. My heart pounds in my chest, but I keep my movements calm, measured. "Don't touch her," I warn, my voice low, barely more than a whisper. But there's steel in my tone, and Aguila's guy hesitates, looking back at his boss for guidance. Aguila chuckles darkly, waving his hand again and giving the go-ahead. The guy steps forward, reaching for Audrey's shoulder. As the thug reaches out to pat Audrey down, she moves with lightning speed. Her hand snaps up, grabbing his wrist before he can touch her. There's a flicker of surprise in his eyes as she twists his arm, forcing him to his knees. The other cartel member stands up, hands drifting toward their weapons. I don't hesitate. In one swift motion, I draw my pistol and level it directly at his forehead. Tell your men to back off, I bark, while a half a dozen barrels are trained back on us. Red laser sight stands across our chests. Aguila looks down the barrel of my gun, but instead of fear, a sly smile spreads across his face. He almost seems entertained. You sure you want to do this? He asks casually, like we're discussing the weather. You draw a gun on me. In my own house? That's a bold move. I'll go as far as I need to, I reply coldly. Again he chuckles, shaking his head slowly. He raises a hand, signaling his men to back off. Stand down, he orders. Detective is right. You don't lay hands on another man's woman. We have standards. His men hesitate for a moment before stepping back, the tension easing just a notch. He smirks slightly, as if amused by the whole situation. So, what's it gonna be then? I don't reply, keeping my aim locked on his. After a beat longer, I slowly lower my gun. Audrey releases her grip on the thug's twisted arm, giving him a little shove that sends him stumbling back towards his comrades. He glares at her, but thinks better of making another move. Aguila adjusts his jacket, brushing off an invisible speck of dust. His eyes never leave mine. Smart choice, he says with a thin smile. Now follow me. Don Manuel is expecting us. He turns on his heel and strides back to the SUV. His men disperse, some climbing back into their vehicles, others staying behind to keep an eye on us. Audrey and I exchange a quick glance. We both know we're stepping deeper into the lion's den. We make our way back to our car, falling in line behind Aguila's convoy as it snakes its way through the labyrinth of shipping containers and warehouses. As we reach the dead end in the maze of containers, I can't shake the uneasy feeling settling in my gut as I step out of the car. I thought we were going to see the Don, I call out, trying to keep my tone casual. He glances back briefly. We will, but first a little detour. Gotta make sure you're still one of us. Since when do I need to prove that? I shoot back. He doesn't answer, instead stopping in front of a large refrigerated container. The Hive's logo is stamped on the side, a friendly carton bee, smiling like this is just another delivery service. A friendly cartoon bee, smiling like this is just another delivery service. Two of his men move ahead, unlocking the heavy doors. A cloud of cold air billows out as they swing open, revealing darkness inside. I hesitate. What's going on? What's this about? Aguila steps aside, gesturing towards the open container. Consider it a loyalty test. A blast of cold air escapes, carrying with it a stench that hits me like a punch to the gut. A mix of decay and disinfectant that can only mean one thing. Inside, the container is lit by harsh fluorescent lights that cast a sterile glow over a chilling scene. Rows of naked bodies hang from meat hooks embedded in the ceiling, their lifeless forms swaying slightly. The corpses are a mix of men and women, their skins marked with tattoos that tell stories of allegiance. MS-13, Los Zetas, Norteños, or really anyone who dared cross paths with the Sinaloa. The bodies show signs of torture, deep lacerations, burns, limbs twisted at unnatural angles. Some are missing fingers, others are missing eyes, each with a bullet hole at the base of the skull. The sight hits me like a freight train, and suddenly I'm back in that warehouse during the Vasquez massacre. The screams, the gunfire, the metallic scent of blood, it's all crashing over me. My chest tightens and for a moment I can't breathe. The edges of my vision blur and the faces of the hanging bodies start to morph into those of my family. Audrey notices me falter. Ramon, you okay? She whispers. I shake my head, trying to snap out of it. Yeah, it's just... I'm fine. After the massacre, the nightmare started. My shrink said I had PTSD and handed me a prescription. Tried them for a while, but the meds messed with my head even more. made me feel like a zombie. So I ditched them and turned to other means to keep the demons at bay. Whiskey usually does the trick, at least enough to get me through the night. I raise my gun instinctively. Aguila holds up his hand. "Relax, amigos," he says with that same sick smile. "You're not joining them today, not if you play your cards right." I lower my weapon slightly, though I don't holster it. Aguila steps further inside, motioning for us to follow. I glance at Audrey, who gives a tight nod, and we move in behind him. Boots clanging against the metal floor of the container. At the far end, 2 men in blood-splattered aprons are standing over a middle-aged man, bound and badly beaten. His face is swollen beyond recognition, the skin around his eyes a mottled purple-black, his lips split and bloody. "You remember Mateo, don't you, Castillo?" Aguila asks, gesturing to the guy like he's presenting a prized calf. I stare at him, his battered face barely recognizable under the bruises and blood. His swollen eyes struggle to focus, but when they lock onto mine, a flicker of fear flashes across them. "Mateo," I say softly. His head lifts slowly at the sound of his name, eyes struggling to focus. "Ramon?" he croaks, voice barely audible over the hum of the cooling units. "Please help me." Mateo Cruz wasn't just some run-of-the-mill lawyer. He was the Don's go-to fixer. A man with a reputation for making legal problems disappear before they even made it to court. He knew the inner workings of the cartel like the back of his hand. Who was in charge of what, where the money flowed, which cops were on the payroll. If anyone ever got too curious, Mateo made sure they never asked a second question. About a month before the Vasquez debacle, I'd uncovered a secret that Mateo had been double-dealing, feeding intel to Luis Colon, a rival capo who'd been circling for the top spot like a vulture ever since El Chapo got arrested. Cruz was giving him the keys to the kingdom, hoping to jump ship when the dust settled. But he'd gotten sloppy. I was the one who exposed him. I fed just enough evidence to Don Manuel, making sure Mateo's betrayal would come to light. The Don took care of the rest. Aguila leaned against the doorframe of the refrigerated container, arms crossed. "You see, Castillo, Mateo here, he made a mistake. A big one. He forgot where his loyalties lie." Mateo's eyes widened as he turned to me, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "Ramon, please." "Shut him up," Aguila snaps, his voice cold. One of the men in apron steps forward, slamming a fist into Mateo's gut. He doubles over, gasping for air, tears mixing with the blood smeared across his swollen face. Aguila steps closer to me, lowering his voice. The Don's orders were clear. Cruz here is a traitor. Now you know what that means. My hand tightens around the grip of my Glock. "Ramon, you can't do this," Audrey says and grabs my arm, her eyes searching mine, silently begging me to remember who I used to be. Mateo's on his knees now, sobbing, his body trembling with fear. "Ramon, please, I have a family. My little girl, she's 4. You know me. I didn't mean for this to happen." His words stabbed at me, but I keep my expression blank, shutting out the emotion. I've been in this situation before, too many times. There's always a sob story, always someone with a family, someone who didn't mean for things to go wrong. "Listen, Aguila," I say, turning to face him while keeping Mateo in my peripheral vision. Killing Cruz isn't just about offing a traitor. Think about the fallout here. Colon's been itching for a reason to challenge the Don. We hand him this and he'll rally every dissatisfied soldier to his side. Blood will spill in every corner. The last thing Don Manuel needs is a civil war tearing us apart from the inside. You think too much," he said and smirked. "Pull that trigger, Or you can forget about meeting Don Manuel. You can forget about walking out of here. I glance at Audrey, her eyes locked on mine. A silent plea hidden in their depths. She knows what's coming, but she's leaving the choice to me. Her hand hovers over her gun, ready for anything. I raise my Glock, but before I can act, Aguila shakes his head and gestures towards one of the men. Too loud, he says. The hitman steps forward, handing me a Beretta fitted with a suppressor. Make it clean, he adds. Mateo's breath is ragged, his swollen face trembling as he continues to sob, his voice barely holding together. Ramon, please. Shut the fuck up, I snap, my voice low but firm. For a moment, there's silence. He looks up at me, his chest heaving, a glimmer of hope flickering in his eyes like maybe, just maybe, there's a chance I'll spare him. But there's not. Stand up and die like a man, I order, my tone cold, detached. Mateo stares at me, his body shaking as he struggles to his feet. It's a pitiful sight. His legs barely hold him up. The chains clanking against the metal floor as he rises. His breath shallow and panicked. I don't deserve this, he whispers again. Stop it, I say, shoving the barrel of the pistol into his mouth, the cold metal clinking against his teeth. My finger hovers just above the trigger, ready, waiting. But for a brief second, I hesitate, lowering my weapon. Shoot him, Aguila growls, stepping closer. His tone is casual almost. Shoot him like you did that pig in the warehouse. The flashback hits me like a freight train. One moment, I'm standing in front of Mateo, my finger hovering over the trigger. The next, I'm back in that godforsaken warehouse, the night of the Vasquez ambush. It was supposed to be a straightforward shakedown, a sting operation designed to catch the Sinaloa cartel with their pants down. But I knew it wasn't going to end like that. I made sure of it. I had tipped off Vasquez about the raid, just enough to keep him ahead of the feds. He was supposed to slip away quietly, leave the heat behind for us to clean up, but that's not what happened. The warehouse was a killing floor, as the cartel ambushed the task force. Bodies piled up, law enforcement and cartel soldiers alike, gunned down in a hail of bullets. I can still hear the sound of automatic weapons echoing off the concrete walls, the wet thud of bodies hitting the ground, the screams, the chaos. As the dust settled, the cartel wasn't about to leave any loose ends. They went around executing the wounded. No mercy, no hesitation. A bullet to the head for every cop lying on the floor, gasping for breath. I was making my way through the carnage when I saw him, Officer Dominguez, my friend and colleague. He was lying against a pile of crates, clutching his side, his face pale and slick with sweat. A bullet had torn through his gut, leaving him bleeding out on the ground. His breaths were shallow, each one a struggle. Audrey was right behind me, her eyes darting between Dominguez and the approaching cartel soldiers. She looked at me, her voice frantic. We've got to get him help. We can't just leave him here. He's seen too much, I said, my voice flat, the reality of the situation sinking in. I crouched down next to Dominguez, my face calm, my voice steady. You're gonna be okay, buddy. I lied, placing a hand on his shoulder. His eyes were filled with hope, desperate and pleading. Ramon, I didn't let him finish. In one smooth motion, I pulled my Glock from its holster, pressed the barrel against his chest, and pulled the trigger. I haven't been able to fire a weapon since that day, not even on the range. Every time I feel the cold metal of a trigger beneath my finger, I'm back in that warehouse, with Dominguez's blood on my hands. But as I hold Aguila's pistol, something about it feels off. I've been around firearms long enough to know when something's not right. The balance isn't there. The heft of live rounds missing from the magazine. I could be wrong, though. There's only one way to know for sure. Mateo is praying under his breath. His words spill out in rapid-fire Spanish, a mess of pleas and promises that fall on deaf ears. His sobs get louder, more frantic as he realizes what's happening. He doesn't try to run, though. They never do. They just beg, as if there's still a chance. My finger rests on the trigger, and I can feel the familiar pressure beneath it. Just a slight squeeze, and it's over. As I stand there, Mateo's face begins to blur. My vision swims, and for a moment I think it's just the fluorescent lights messing with me. But then his features start to shift, the skin sagging, eyes sinking, back into his skull. The bruises and cuts fade, replaced by ashen flesh stretched tight over bone. Ramon, he rasps, but it's not Mateo's voice anymore. It's deeper, filled with a haunting echo. I blink hard, trying to clear my head. When I open my eyes, I'm no longer looking at Mateo. Instead, Officer Dominguez stands before me, his uniform tattered and stained with dark, dried blood. A gaping gunshot wound pierces his forehead, the edges ragged, with bits of bone and brain matter oozing out. His eyes, cloudy and lifeless, lock onto mine. "Why did you do it?" Dominguez asks, his voice carrying the weight of the grave. "We were partners, friends." My heart pounds in my chest, every beat echoing in my ears like a drum. "This isn't real," I mutter under my breath. "You're dead." He takes a step closer, chains clinking softly. "Dead because of you," he hisses. "You gonna shoot me again? Go ahead and pull the trigger." I glance around and the horror deepens. The bodies hanging from the meat hooks are moving now, their limbs twitching, heads lifting. Sunken eyes fixate on me and mouths begin to move, whispering in a chilling chorus. Traitor, murderer. Their voices blend together, a haunting melody that fills the cold air. The walls of the container seem to close in, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. My grip on the gun tightens, palms slick with sweat. "Enough!" I shout, raising the gun and pressing the barrel against his forehead, right where the wound gapes. I pull the trigger. Nothing happens. No recoil, no sound. Just a hollow click echoing in the cold space. Dominguez tilts his head, that ghastly smile widening. "What's wrong? No bullets?" A wave of panic surges through me. I pull the trigger again. Nothing. He leans in, his face inches from mine. "You can't escape this," he whispers. I stagger back, and in a blink, he's gone. Mateo is back, crumpled on the floor, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Por favor, Ramon," he pleads, his voice small and desperate. My hands tremble as I lower the useless weapon. Sweat beads on my forehead, and I can feel every eye in the room on me. The whispers have stopped, the hanging bodies once again lifeless. Aguila's laugh fills the cold air of the container, low and cruel, as I drop the empty gun. "Good to see you are still who you are, Castillo," he says, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "You passed the test." Aguila turns to the men in the blood-spattered aprons, who have been silently standing by, watching the entire scene unfold. "Cut off one of his fingers," he orders casually, as if he's telling them to clean up a spill. "Send it to Cologne as proof we have one of his guys. Let him know we're open to negotiations." One of the men steps forward without hesitation, pulling a pair of heavy-duty shears from his belt. He grabs Mateo's hand, forcing it down on the middle table. Mateo starts begging, but the man grips Mateo's pinky finger, the shears poised to cut. I glance at Aguila, who's watching with cold indifference. "Enough games, Pagan. I need to see Vasquez." "Yeah, all right, sure, come on," Aguila says, nodding for me to follow him, as if the gruesome display isn't happening, just a few feet away. "Don Manuel is expecting you." As we step out of the container, I hear the snap of the shears cutting through bone and tendon, followed by Mateo's scream, a raw, animalistic sound of agony. The door swings shut behind us, muffling the noise, but not enough to block it out completely. We pull up in front of a sleek, modern office building tucked away at the far end of the board. You wouldn't expect it, but there it is, the center of the hive. Deceptively clean and corporate-looking, a contrast to the chaos and violence that fuels everything inside of it. Aguila steps out first, flanked by his guys. Audrey's beside me, her hand twitching just above her waistline, fingers brushing the grip of her sidearm. We walk through the sliding glass doors into a pristine lobby. It's too clean, spotless, sterile even. Everything is white marble and chrome, polished to a shine. The faint sound of Andar Conmigo by Julieta Venegas plays softly through hidden speakers, its upbeat melody at odds with the tension hanging in the air. There's a receptionist behind the front desk, young, early 20s, with sleek dark hair and an immaculately pressed blouse. She looks more like she should be working at some Fortune 500 company than at the epicenter of a multi-million-dollar criminal empire. Senor Castillo, Senorita Dawson. She greets us with a practiced smile, completely unfazed by the armed entourage surrounding us. Don Manuel is expecting you. Please follow me. We follow her down a long, quiet hallway, the only sound the faint clicking of her heels on the marble floor. She leads us to an elevator with mirrored walls that reflect everything back at us. Me, Aguila, Audrey, and the armed guards trailing just a step behind. No one says a word as we go. The doors slide open with a soft ding. We step out of the elevator into a long, sterile hallway. At the end of the hall, a large wooden door looms. The receptionist knocks, and a deep voice calls out, "Adelante." She opens the door, revealing a private office suite. As we step inside, it's clear that this is no ordinary workspace. It's got the trappings of a successful CEO. Expensive leather chairs, a massive mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bustling port below. The San Diego skyline stretches out, but it feels distant, like a painting that doesn't quite belong to the reality we're in. And then there's Don Manuel. He's seated behind his desk, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and multiple computer screens displaying various security. He's older now, in his 60s, gray creeping into his thick black hair. But he still carries himself like a man in his prime. He's wearing a tailored suit, crisp and spotless, and if you didn't know better, you'd think he was just another businessman closing deals and signing contracts. But he's more than that. He's the kind of a man who shapes the world around him, bends it to his will. The office, the shipping company, the entire operation, it's all an extension of him. Every brick in this building, it's a product of his control. He's also the man who made me who I am. The Don looks up, his expression shifting from intense focus to mild surprise. "Ramon?" he utters, standing up, and Aguila steps forward. "Jefe, we found Castillo poking around with his little Zora here," he says, jerking a thumb toward Audrey. "He's asking questions and making demands." But before he can get a word out, Don Manuel raises a hand, palm out. The gesture is subtle, but it shuts Aguila down immediately. "Gracias, Bruno," he says, his voice smooth and authoritative. "I appreciate your diligence, as always, but I think I can handle things from here." Aguila hesitates, clearly taken back. "Don Manuel, I think I should stay." "I said, gracias," Don Manuel repeats, his smile unwavering, but there's steel beneath it. "I need to speak to Ramon by myself." Aguila's jaw tightens, and for a moment it looks like he might argue. But he knows better. Everyone does. You don't cross Don Manuel, not without consequences. He gives me one last hard look before he turns on his heel and stalks out of the room, his men following close behind. Once we're alone, the Don's demeanor shifts. The cold, calculating cartel boss recedes, replaced by the man I once knew. A man who was always calm and methodical, but who could still make you feel like you were the most important person in the room. His smile deepens and he steps towards me with open arms. Ramon, it's been too long, he says, pulling me into a brief hug, slapping my back with that warm affection he's perfected over the years. But I feel the undercurrent of power behind it, the same way he'd embrace a man 1 minute, then have him buried in a shallow grave the next. Don Manuel, it's good seeing you, I reply, keeping my voice steady, respectful. I've learned from experience. You don't disrespect the man who built your life from the ground up, not if you want to keep breathing. His eyes flick to Audrey for a second, and the warmth fades, replaced by the faintest hint of suspicion. But then, just as quickly, the mask of warmth returns. He steps forward, offering his hand with that same disarming smile. Ah, and you must be the infamous Audrey Dawson, he says, his voice dripping with charm. I've heard so much about you. The woman who helped Ramon out of that little mess in Baja, no? Audrey hesitates for only a second before taking his hand. Something like that, she replies, her voice cool, matching his energy. Don Manuel chuckles, patting the back of her hand gently, as if they were old friends. Good. Ramon always did need someone watching his back. Please, Don Manuel says, gesturing to the plush leather chairs in front of his desk. I hesitate for a second, glancing at Audrey, who's still standing by the door, her eyes scanning the room like she expects an ambush any second. I give her a slight nod before taking a seat. She follows suit, reluctantly easing into the chair next to me. Don Manuel sits back down, steepling his fingers, his dark eyes locking onto mine. So tell me, Ramon, what brings you here today? This isn't a social call, is it? His smile never wavers, but I can feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. I swallow hard, trying to keep my cool. We've got a situation, I start, choosing my words carefully. It involves something not of this world. Not of this world? The Don's eyebrows raise ever so slightly, but he doesn't interrupt. He knows I'll get to the point eventually, and for now he's content to let me squirm a little. It's his way of reminding me that no matter how far I think I've come, I'm still under his control. And I am. Hell, I have been since I was a kid. I grew up with nothing, an undocumented single mom, living in the barrio of San Ysidro, where the cops only showed up when someone was already dead. My mom did her best, cleaning houses, doing whatever odd job she could find, but it was never enough. We were always one bad month away from losing everything. And then Don Manuel came into our lives. He didn't help us just out of pity. He saw something in me, something of himself. He started small, covering our rent, making sure my mom had enough money to keep food on the table. Then he put me through school, paid for my tuition, uniforms, all of it. He told me I was smart, that I could make something of myself, and I believed him, because I wanted to. By the time I was in high school, I was already running errands for his guys. Small stuff at first, delivering messages, keeping an eye on people. Nothing big, but it made me feel important. Like I had a purpose. When I turned 18, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Join the force. I became a beat cop right out of the academy. I kept things low-key. I worked the rougher parts of the town, places where most cops didn't bother to stick around after their shift ended. I knew those streets inside and out because I grew up on them. I'd arrest rival cartel members and quietly tip off Don Manuel when a big raid was coming. I told myself I wasn't all bad. I funneled money back into the neighborhood, fixed up playgrounds, and covered school supplies for kids who couldn't afford them. I helped out families like mine, people who had no one else. It made me feel better about the other things I was doing, like somehow I could balance the scales. The Don, meanwhile, was playing the long game. He had the streets locked, but he wanted real power. He wanted his own guy deep inside the sheriff's department, someone in Homicide, someone who could protect La Familia when things went sideways. So while I was making street arrests by day, I was earning my degree in criminal justice at night at San Diego State, climbing the ladder one rung at a time. First came the detective promotion. Then came the narcotics case, the drug bust that kept the brass happy and gave the Don more territory. By the time I was in Homicide, I wasn't just covering up for the cartel. I was participating, helping them clean up their messes, making bodies disappear, writing false reports. I'd call in favors to make sure evidence got lost, or I'd stall investigations long enough for Don Manuel's men to take care of things. But the job never came without a cost. Rocio, she saw the changes in me. At first I hid it well. I'd come home, put on a smile for her and the kids, act like everything was fine. But then the nightmare started. The drinking, the pills to keep it all together, the lies. She didn't buy it for long. But what could she do? By then she was in too deep as well. If she ever tried to leave, the Don would have found her. And I couldn't protect her. Not from him. Not from the underworld I'd dragged her into. The situation, I began, the words heavier than they should be. Someone kidnapped Rocio and my sons, I managed to say. Vasquez raises an eyebrow. They took Javier and Tomas? Yeah, they did. I hesitate for a moment, then add. They took your grandsons. I don't call Don Manuel Papa. Hell, I've never even said those words to him, not once in my life. But everyone in the family knows what's up. My mom was one of his lovers back in the day, when he was rising through the ranks, making moves in the cartel. She was young, beautiful, and naive, and he used that. By the time she found out she was pregnant, he was already married, and well on his way to becoming one of the most powerful men in the cartel. She never told me, but I always knew. I'm a detective. Those kinds of things don't get past me. There's a long pause, the kind that makes your chest tighten, waiting for what comes next. Don Manuel's eyes narrow. His jaw clenches hard enough that I can hear the faint grind of his teeth. He doesn't speak, but the temperature in the room drops. The air heavy with something darker than rage. Pure, primal fear. I've never seen him like this. The man's orchestrated massacres, watched rivals flayed alive, and ordered hits on entire families without batting an eye. But this hits different. The boys, his blood being taken from under his nose. It's not just personal. It's a declaration of war. Who the fuck did this? He demands, carrying a weight that makes the room feel smaller. The federales? Carteles? I hesitate, not because I don't know, but because explaining the situation about the creature, the chapel, and the dagger sounds insane. But I also know there's no point in lying to him. Not now. It's not the feds, not a rival cartel either. I start, running a hand through my hair. It's something else. They want some kind of relic, the dagger of holy death. He leans forward, his elbows resting on the polished wood of his desk, hands clasped together. You're telling me it's about the shipment, aren't you? I nod slowly, unsure of how much he already knows. Yeah, that night, the ambush, it wasn't just about the drugs or guns, was it? Who told you about the dagger, Ramon? He asks with an edge in his voice. A creature, I say. The words feeling ridiculous even as they leave my mouth. It tore off a woman's face and wore it like a mask. It said things about you, about me, about the ambush, things no one else would know. For a moment, Don Manuel doesn't say anything. His eyes flick to Audrey and then back to me, like he's assessing the situation, deciding how much to trust us. For the first time since I walked into his office, he looks genuinely rattled. What did it want? He asks. There's something there in his voice, desperation. I take a breath, my mind racing. It wants the dagger. It said if I don't bring it back, my family's dead. Rocio, the boys, all of them. Gone. For a moment, there's nothing but the soft hum of the air conditioning, the quiet ticking of the clock on the wall. Then Don Manuel stands up, walks over to the massive floor-to-ceiling window behind his desk, and looks out at the port below. His hands clasped behind his back, and when he speaks again, his voice is barely more than a whisper. That dagger. I knew it would come back to haunt us, he says, almost to himself. Vasquez turns back around, his expression more serious than ever. You're right. The shipment that night wasn't the usual. There were artifacts too, Aztec, real ones, stolen from a dig site down in Co.Ag, worth millions on the antiquities black market. I nod, staying quiet. He's building up to something. I can feel it. But, he continues, his voice dropping a notch, there was one item in particular, something that was different. The Don presses a button on his desk, and the massive windows behind him go opaque, sealing off the view of the port. The room feels smaller now, like the walls are closing in on us. Then he strides towards the far wall of his office. He reaches behind a large frame map of Mexico, and with a subtle flick of his wrist, a concealed panel slides open. Inside is a hidden safe, embedded into the wall. Don Manuel punches in a code, and with a metallic clunk, the safe door swings open, revealing an ornate wooden box, its surface intricately carved with symbols I can't immediately place but recognize as Mesoamerican. The box emanates an unsettling aura, like it's holding something that shouldn't be disturbed. He pulls it out and sets it on his desk, his fingers brushing over the carvings almost reverently. He's not just showing us a piece of art, this is something far more dangerous. The Don opens the lid slowly, and inside lies an obsidian blade, dark and sharp as night. The hilt is wrapped in worn leather, and even from across the desk I can feel a strange, almost magnetic pull from the dagger. The blade is perfectly smooth, polished to a mirror-like finish, yet it seems to absorb the light around it, as if it's more shadow than stone. This, he says, his voice low and grave, is La Daga de la Santa Muerte. Well, what exactly does it do? I ask, my eyes glued to the blade. Don Manuel doesn't answer my question right away. Instead, he pushes the box closer, the dagger gleaming darkly inside. His eyes meet mine, and for the first time, I see something behind that calm, calculating gaze. Terror. You have to see it to understand for yourself, he says. I hesitate for a moment, staring at the dagger lying in its ornate box. The blade seems to pulse subtly, like it's breathing, alive. Audrey shifts beside me, her hand brushing my arm as if to anchor me in the moment, to remind me that we're still here, still breathing. But the pull of the blade is undeniable, as if it's calling me. I reach out. The moment my fingers brush against the hilt of the blade, it feels like I've been electrocuted. Every nerve in my body tightens, and for a split second, the room around me, the office, the sounds of the port outside, fades away. And then I'm there. I'm standing on the edge of the vast, barren landscape. The sky above is a swirling mass of storm clouds, dark and violent, crackling with green and blue lightning that arcs through the air. The ground beneath me is black, slick with mud and blood. It's sticky, pulling at my feet as I struggle to move. All around me are jagged mountains of obsidian, their edges gleaming, sharp enough to split bone with a glance. The air is thick, suffocating, like I'm breathing through wet cloth. It smells of death, decay, and something sulfuric, like brimstone. I try to pull my hand away from the dagger, but I can't. I'm rooted to the spot, frozen as the vision continues to unfold before me. In the distance, I see a colossal temple rising out of the ground, built from bones and covered in carvings that writhe and pulse like they're alive. At the top of the temple, a figure stands, a skeletal figure wrapped in blood-red robes, its bony hands raised towards the sky. Mictlantecuhtli, I whisper, the name sliding off my tongue as if I've always known it. The god of death. The flayed one. The deathly figure turns, and even from this distance, I can feel its gaze lock onto me. Cold, merciless, ancient. Ramon, are you okay? Audrey's voice slices through the chaos like a lifeline. but it's not right. It sounds distant, warped as if it's filtering through layers of static. I look around, trying to focus, and there she is. Audrey, standing just a few feet in front of me. She looks as disoriented as I feel, her eyes wide and frantic, but there's something off about her. The edges of her form shimmer and flick, like she's a bad signal on a busted TV. Her hand clamps down on my wrist, and it's cold, too cold. My skin crawls as her fingers tighten. "Are you okay?" she repeats, her voice urgent. But there's a tremor in it, something unnatural. I try to speak, to pull away, but I cannot. My whole body feels locked in place, trapped between the world I know and this hellish landscape I'm being sucked into. My mouth opens, but nothing comes out, except a choked breath. And then she changes. It happens slowly at first. Her skin starts to ripple, sagging and stretching unnaturally like something's moving beneath it. Her eyes sink deeper into their sockets, darkening until they're hollow pits. Her face distorts, lips pulling back to reveal a skeletal grin that's far too wide, far too wrong. Her fingers tighten around me like a vice. Her nails dig into my skin and I see it. The flesh in her hand is peeling away, curling back like old leather. Beneath it, bone gleams. "Death claims you, my child." Her words come out in a hiss, like a serpent, whispering secrets only the dead should hear. "The armies of the underworld can be yours." She gestures with her skeletal hand. The ground begins to tremble beneath my feet. At first, it's just a low rumble like the distant approach of a storm, but then the earth splits open with a sickening crack, and from the chasms below they begin to emerge. They crawl, slither, and lurch from every shadow and crack. Their bodies are twisted, malformed, like a blind god reached down and tried to make something human but stopped halfway through. I see massive bat-like wings on some. Their leather stretched tight over bones that poke out at impossible angles. Others are hunched and bloated, their bellies dragging through the black mud as they pull themselves forward on arms twice the length of their bodies. Eyes, far too many of them, glint from every corner, tracking my every move. Their mouths hang open, some with rows of sharp teeth, others with no teeth at all. Just endless black pits where screams come from. And then there were faces. Human faces grafted onto these demonic bodies like trophies. Men, women, even children, stitched grotesquely into the creatures' hides. Their mouths move, whispering in Nahuatl, but I can't understand the words. The sound is like a distant chant, growing louder and louder until it feels like it's pounding into my skull. Death's bony hand slides up my arm, cold as ice, and I feel the weight of her word. But first, you must complete the ritual of La Lorna. I don't understand you, I manage to croak out, my voice barely a whisper. Her skeletal face contorts into a grotesque smile. The blood of the innocent must flow, she whispers. Her grip tightens, nails scraping against my skin like shards of bone. Her hollow eyes gleam with something ancient, something hungry. The mother will weep as her children's flesh touches the waters of the Mictlan. Okay. Wow. That was quite the story, I must say. So first of all, let's talk about the author. The author of the story is Paige Turner 627. Paige Turner 627 has been featured on my channel numerous times. Always very good stories, always very good depth of writing. This was definitely one of the longer ones I've done of theirs. A lot of detail, a lot of stories within stories. There was a couple times where I thought it might have turned into a rules story. And there was a couple times where I thought that we were going to maybe see more of the monster instead of just like the one key scene. I personally thought it would have been cool if the cartel and the monster or you know, there would have been some sort of battle there, right? Because you have Detective Ramon, and he's kind of like in the middle of this stuff, and then his family's taken, and then he goes to the cartel and the cartel boss, and the cartel boss, Don Manuel, is presented as some sort of, very strong force in his life, the grandfather, right? Some form of a relative or something like that, kind of like a guardian. And then there is no meeting, and so I was kind of hoping that there would have, it could have escalated into a full-on war between the cartel and this being, but it didn't come to that. And there was this connection between the missing artifact and the creature and the cartel. And so I don't want to, some of these kind of summaries or overviews or post-story thoughts are not intended to be critical of the authors, although some of these things go through my mind as the reader. Because again, shout out to Page Turner, excellent writer, excellent author, love their work. But as the story develops, of course, we start to have questions on, why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? And so that's kind of where my mind went. It definitely took turns that I did not expect it to go down. And there was some interesting things that I picked up on. There was a lot of symbolism. For instance, he talked about the cop killer tattoo. Hadn't heard of that before, with the skull with the blue line in it. And I like the fact also that it took place in Mexico. Like there was this sort of, or maybe not took place in Mexico, but there was this definite, a lot of like Hispanic culture. There was Spanish writing in here, which I skipped over because my Spanish is not that great. Well, and then Page Turner put like the English translation, so you didn't miss any parts of the story, but the English translation is what I read. But you don't see that as frequently, like other multicultural type of settings and stories. Like there was another one that I read. It was an HOA story. It was a really good rule story. It's one of, I think it's got like 50,000 views on my channel. That was about an Arabic guy. An Arabic family, which you don't really come across those sorts of stories very often. And so I really, really liked that this was in a different setting than the traditional creepypasta, with different players and different elements to it, and then of course this sort of creature of death thrown in the mix. So all in all, I really liked the story. I thought it brought a lot of diversity, a lot of different things that we just don't tend to get in the genre, in the hobby as much. But I really enjoyed it. I would, like I said, I think my only thing was I thought it would have been cool if there was kind of like that final war and we reached a conclusion one way or another. But it looks to me like the author kind of wanted to reach its own conclusion with some implied horror there at the end of, basically, look, this is where this is going. It's not good for you, Ramon. And, we're closing out here. And so, I enjoyed this one. I liked it a lot. So hopefully you guys did too. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you're new here and you like my content, please subscribe to the channel. I've seen a ton of brand new incoming visitors and returning visitors, but they haven't subscribed yet. So feel free to subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And thanks so much for checking out the story.